A calls and TDM.
2021 regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Trustees of the San Marcos CISD. At this time, I am declaring that we have quorum with all trustees present except for President Cantu. I will be acting in her stead tonight, so please, y'all, bear with me. Let us now stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
And at this time, I don't think we have anybody here to speak for public forum. So we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Madam President, members of the board, good evening, members of the public and those in attendance. We appreciate you. At this time, we have a very special recognition. So if I could have Mr. Ralph Gonzalez, Mr. Joe Castillo, Mrs. Celia Barragan, Mrs. Sylvia Boasi, Maggie Moreno, if she is pregnant, Mrs. Maggie Moreno, Mrs. Mary Earls, and Ms. Melissa Donaldson. They represent Nosotros la Gente, and we have a special proclamation from Board President Halsey.
Thanks, y'all. This is a proclamation recognizing the 25th anniversary of Nosotros la Gente. Whereas, in 1996, Ralph Gonzalez founded a nonprofit organization that became known as Nosotros la Gente, dedicated to improving the community by providing assistance to families in need and promoting equity and justice to all citizens. And whereas Nosotros la Gente has provided assistance with medical needs to citizens of the community and created the Viva Zapatos shoe distribution 25 years ago to provide a free pair of shoes to needy children from the San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District, and whereas Nosotros la Gente has held an annual shoe distribution in December, giving over 1,000 pair of shoes each year, and whereas the organization's fundraisers are made possible by its members, more than 400 people strong, as well as volunteers, contributors, and donors from local citizens and businesses, and whereas the organization has provided to date over 25,000 pair of shoes to low-income children of the San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District, and whereas the Nosotros la Gente organization has spent well over $250,000 during the 25 years at its annual Viva Zapatos shoe distribution, and whereas this wonderful organization has made a difference in the San Marcos community and will celebrate its 25th year of service to San Marcos, Texas in 2021, now, therefore, be it resolved that the San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District Board of Trustees recognizes on November 15th, 2021, the 25th anniversary of Nosotros la Gente, and do hereby call upon the people of our community to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation to the dedicated men and women who provide assistance to San Marcos citizens and shoes to the needy children of the San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District. Thank you.
I would just like to thank the school board and our superintendent for this dedication to our organization. I also want to dedicate this proclamation to Mary Gonzalez, my Uncle Ralph's wife, who was one of the backbones of this whole organization and our turkey dinner that we had annually. Since COVID and illnesses, we've lost some of our most valuable members, Aunt Delia Lopez, Irene Trinidad, Sammy Gomez, and of course our Aunt Mary Gonzalez. But we continue to find a way to be there for our kids. I'm a former San Marcos CISD teacher from here. I taught here 27 years, and so this is, even though I live in New Braunfels now, my heart is here. This is home to me. And my Uncle Ralph, like they said, 1996, 25 years ago, had this dream to continue to help the children of San Marcos. And COVID or no COVID, we found a way. And we thank the parent liaisons from all the schools, because they have helped us out by making it possible to get those shoes to the kids and to make a difference. And so I just want to thank all the people that help us. We couldn't have our turkey dinner because of COVID and just making sure that everything was safe, but we continue to find other means to gather our monies together to be there for our kids. On December 7th, we'll do our shoe drive again, and we'll get those shoes out to the kids and make sure that they know that we're here for them. So I thank you for acknowledging us, and I thank the community for always being there to support us. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez can say whatever he wants.
Thank you. To us, it's rewarding to be able to do this for this many years. And the community that helps us, and the school district that let us use the cafeteria to do fundraising. And we thank all of you also from the bottom of our hearts. And I'm not the one that does the speaking. I let somebody else do it because I'll start stuttering and getting trembling. So I'm holding right here. But thank you, the community and the school district and the school board. And we love you, and we'll continue doing as long as we can.
Thank you.
Oh.
Y'all come too. You stand behind them.
Can we squeeze it a little more? There we go. Ready, 1, 2, 3. One more, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, see you, Joe. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Andrew. Oh, wait, look, Mr. Hernandez.
It's on there. I have to fix something else.
Just a couple more things, Madam President. I want to also take a moment to thank Mr. Wozniak and all our school nurses. This past weekend, we had our first vaccine clinic for our students 5 through 11 years old. You always worry when you sign up, but we have some dedicated professionals who were there from 9 o'clock to about 2 o'clock Saturday, and talking to families and to adults about the importance of being vaccinated. And we're going to get some information up because I know this board is very interested in the health and safety of our community. I will say we had 350 people sign up. We had 251 students actually show up, which is about 71% of those kids who signed up came. And additionally, Diana Eastwood, being the bargainer that she is, traded some vaccines to the county and got some adult vaccines. And so we took care of the 36 additional adults who either needed a booster or a second shot. So we appreciate the work that they did. Bringing up the other information. I also want to take a moment to thank our coaches. Our athletic director, Coach Walsh, is here. It's been a fun fall semester. It's not the way we wanted it to end, but as I told Coach Friday night, it's just the beginning of a building block. And so I also want to take a moment to thank our fine arts coordinators. We've had some amazing fine arts things going on. Our FFA students, we had 3 students participate in the National FFA program as band members, and so in December, we'd like to honor, have a festive event to honor all our kids who have showcased. We have our National Merit kids that we've had up here before. If we can go to the next slide, please, on the COVID. Oh, that left me hanging. So we also want to thank Dr. Salmi, who connected us with a company that does asymptomatic testing. So just as of October, we have tested over 706 tests, and we've only had one positive. We've given over 500 booster shots for staff, their third shots. I mentioned the vaccination clinic, and we also had during this time, we had the flu vaccine, and so we have about 300 people that went through our building that are employees who got vaccinated. We estimate more, like I got mine outside of the school system, and so we feel very good about the safety and health measures. And Mr. Wozniak, is he present here somewhere? I don't know if you want to add, I can't believe I can't see him. If you want to add anything else that I'm missing?
No, you did a great job.
It's a good health and safety director right there. And finally, I just want to take a moment to thank all our parents, our students, our teachers. It's been extremely difficult first semester, but I think it was less anxiety-driven this go-around because of the wonderful staff and the administrators and the parents and the students cooperating. It's easy to get caught up in the social media aspect, but when you're on campuses every day, you see the great work taking place with our students and with our staff members and how much they're committed to making sure that our kids are reading, writing on grade level and doing math. And for that, we hope that in the near future, 4 more days, you get some rest, put your phones down and your computers down, and just take a moment to be with your family and just relax for a week as we head towards our next break. And Madam President, with that ends my superintendent report.
Thank you so much. I wanted to say a special thank you to Mr. Wozniak and his team. I know that giving vaccines to 5 to 11-year-olds is sometimes very difficult. I have witnessed it, and so we really appreciate that. I've heard just spectacular things from everybody who was there on Saturday. And then I know that we're going to do a big acknowledgement in December, but I think that we should announce tonight that Coach Teo was selected as the coach of the all-district coach.
District Coach of the Year for 26-6A.
For volleyball, and Maggie Walsh was MVP of the district, which is just a significant, huge achievement, and so we're so proud of everybody, so thank you. Then we'll continue with reports and information from the administration.
Mr. Sanders? It seems like we're having computer glitches right now.
Okay. Do we need to? Everything's a computer update. Can we do the budget without
It's all on the same computer.
and the auditors?
We
Okay.
could potentially.
We can take a break.
Mr. Doyle, we could do the audit. Do you need the computer to do your audit report? Ms. Gutierrez or Ms. Garcia, you want to introduce?
Yeah, let's move ahead to the audit report while we're getting the computer problems worked out. So, thank you.
So, good evening, Board and Dr. Cardona. My name is Denise Garcia, Finance Director. Tonight we have the presentation of our 2020-21 Annual Financial Report. And tonight we have Ms. Janet Pittman from our auditing firm, ABIP, that will be presenting.
Good evening. I'm going to take this off. My voice is not very loud. You have 2 documents in front of you. One is the actual bound report of the final draft, and then a letter that we'll go through this first. I forgot to say good evening and thank you for having me here tonight. On page 1, and I'm not going to ask you to flip through the document. I'll just tell you where the items are located in case you want to look at them. But on page 1 is our independent auditor's report. It is what we call an unmodified report. It is the best report that you can receive, and it basically means that we didn't make any modifications to your financials, and they are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Again, it is the best assurance that we can give to you. Back on page 93 is another report that we issue. It is over your internal controls and other compliance matters. So when we start our audit, we do what we call a risk assessment. So we're looking at your internal controls over your major processes, which are like payroll and cash disbursements, cash receipts, who's approving all of those items. If we had any issues with segregation of duties or internal control related matters, they would be in this report, and we are pleased to say that we did not have any issues to report to you on you have good internal controls and segregation of duties over your processes. The third report that we issue that's in the bound document starts on page 95. And because you received this year over $11 million in federal funds, we are required to do what we call single audit, which is basically the federal government gives us regulations that we're supposed to look at certain items to make sure you're spending in accordance with the federal government. And this year we had two major programs. You got special ed, special education, and your ESSER funds, which are your COVID-19 funds. And we're pleased to report in this report that we had no findings or question costs related to the federal programs this year. Now I'm going to skip back to page 17, which is the most important number on that page, if you do want to skip to it, is the general fund unassigned fund balance. It's $47.8 million, a very healthy fund balance. It represents 7 months of operating expenditures. In your general fund is, of course, your major operating fund for the district. So those dollars are meant for ongoing operations. Last year you had 6.5 months of operating, so it just increased slightly. Best practices suggest 2 to 6 months of operating expenditure, so you're just a little over that. Again, a very healthy fund balance. You did have a refunding this year on your Series 2015 bonds. So what you do is issue new bonds, use those dollars to pay off the old bonds, and the new bonds have a lower interest rate, so you did have a savings of about $560,000. Then the one schedule I would like to is on page 56. It's your budget to actual. I'll give you time to get there. And you can see you did a nice job budgeting the revenue. Your final budget was $81 million. It's at the top of the page under final. And then your actual was actually $83.6 million. So you had a positive variance of $2.5 million. On page 57, you can see your total expenditures. You budgeted $84 million. You actually spent $78 million, so you had a nice savings there of $6 million. It's been very difficult, especially with COVID, to get right on some of those expenditures. So the biggest savings was in, of course, instructional services. That's short, I know, but I'm done with the financial. If there's anybody that has any questions, I would be glad to take those.
Thank you so much, and thanks to our spectacular finance department in another banner year, so thank you.
I just wanted to I'm quickly going to go over the other letter that we issue. I'm not going to go through, I mean, you can read it. It is basically required communication between us, the auditors, and you, the governing body that oversees the district. I'd just like to mention a couple of items. On page 2, at the very top of that, is corrected and uncorrected misstatements. We did not have any audit adjustments that were very material this year. That's always good news to report to the board because the financial information that you're getting throughout the year, you can rely on those numbers to make your financial decisions. And then on the very last page, we are required as part of our audit process to make sure you are in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. And we did find that you were materially in compliance with that act, with your investment policy and your investments that you invest in. That's all I have, but I'm glad to take any questions.
Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, are we ready?
I think so.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Mr. Superintendent.
All right. Good evening, Board Trustees, Superintendent Cardona. Tonight, you will hear the final presentations from our campus leaders on their academic updates. So we have our 3 leaders from Hernandez, Mendez, and Rodriguez here. So I'm going to turn it over to, we're going to start with Hernandez. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know if I pulled it up or if Andrew was going to do it. I will do it. There it is. Okay, good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Cardona. I am Jennifer Gonzalez, the proud principal of Hernandez Elementary, and I'm here to tell you about all the wonderful things our heroes are doing this year. Like all of my colleagues, we have a strong focus on SEL supports for our students, so focusing on those morning meetings every morning. Our counselor is amazing, and she goes around at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the year and checks in with every single student just to see how they're doing, safety checks. So she's been doing those, constant brain breaks with our kiddos, SEL integration into lessons, and our school-wide PBIS system. Mentoring and counseling. Our counseling is built into our specials rotation, so students get time with the counselor in their specials. We have mentors on campus who do check-ins and check-outs, and we also have the Greater San Marcos Youth Council that comes in for some of our students as well. And enrichment opportunities, community building events, clubs is amazing at our school this year. One of my GT teacher has started a garden club and recruited every person she knows, and we have an amazing garden this year, so that's awesome, and also field trips. Oh, this got all kinds of mixed up, sorry. So our STAR data was great, not where we want it, but comparable, and this got moved around a lot. But comparing 2019 to 2021, our 3rd grade reading, we had in 2019 70% approached, and in 2021 we had 71% approach. So not too far off from where we were in 2019, but we still have a ways to go. The meets was at 46% in 2019 and 45% in 2021. And for our masters, we stayed the same at 31%. For math, that's where we need to grow a little bit. So in 2019, the approaches data was 71%. In 2021, it was 67%. And I can't even read it right now because it got so scrambled, but we're working on it. The meets and masters is where we really need to get our kids back up to. So our growth opportunities are rebuilding strong relationships with students, of course, teaching to mastery, focusing on guided reading and guided math, grade level flex grouping to meet kids where they are, and strengthening tiered instruction and RTI systems. Our ESSER support, so our campus instructional specialists are guiding we call them our closing the gaps teachers, to focus on targeted small group instruction. They are also working on remote conferencing when we have students who have to go for COVID purposes, and then our RTI tiered support these teachers are also giving. Our data comes from, of course, like everyone else, our NWEA MAP screener, adaptive programs, common assessments, and M-class screener. Our strategies we're using is differentiated tier 1 instruction Individual student feedback and goal setting, targeted small group instruction, PLC reflections are big, and our AVID supports. Professional development is offered at Hernandez every fourth Wednesday after school. It is constantly embedded within the PLC cycles. We have many collaborations with Texas State, and all of our teachers are either have completed, enrolled, or will be enrolled in the Texas Reading Academy. So our campus goals for this year: targeted professional learning communities, which is something that district-wide we're all trying to strengthen. We have a 4-week cycle where we look at data, we have reflection on practice and our lesson designs, and we're learning from each other. We go on learning walks in classrooms. Targeted small group instruction is data-driven. Our ESSER teachers are there to support that. We have a shared responsibility. They are all of our students, and we are constantly focusing on the continuum of needs. Excuse me. Our social emotional learning and community outreach, we have regular community events scheduled. We had a huge Fine Arts Hispanic Heritage Month open house night. That was amazing. And our PTO did a trunk or treat, and we have huge outdoor spaces, and so we probably had about 1,000 people show up, and it was safe because we were all outdoors. And so bringing our Hernandez community back to a sense of normal, getting together, doing the fun things again, we've seen a lot of growth in our kids. The extracurricular activities, of course, and just a continued focus on health and safety for our students. Questions?
Thank you. I do not have a student at Hernandez, as you know, but I am the in case of emergency for several of your students, and so I get lots of text updates from Hernandez, and your staff is doing a great job. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we do communicate quite an awful lot, but it's better to over-communicate.
No, it's terrific, and it's always really positive and focused, and it's great. So thank you.
We will figure it out together. Good evening. I'm Christina Woody. I'm the proud principal of Mendez Elementary, and I am super excited to tell you about all the wonderful things that we have going on at Mendez. As soon as I can open this and make sure you can see it. Here we go. Nope. Here. This one. Well, this says, nope, those are just year 2 in there.
Yours is just a PDF.
Yeah. PowerPoint, yeah. Scroll down. Oh, no, it didn't let me. That's what I was trying to do, but I'll try again. Oh, like this. I see what you're saying. Okay. That'll be interesting. Okay, we'll do it. So I'm going to start with, I'll just get to the good stuff. So this is where we started as Mendez. And so when we're looking at 2021 and the data that came in with our kids and where they started this year, some strengths we saw were that our 1st and 2nd grade MAP scores showed increased growth. I think a lot of that has to do with kids coming back at that end of the year. Our 2nd and 3rd grade emergent bilingual reading star scores were better than they had previously been. That has to do with the Tier 1 instruction happening in that classroom. Our growth opportunities, when you looked at it all together, were really our writing and science scores and our math and reading 3 through 5 star, just our student achievement and making sure that they are where they need to be. So as we look at those things and we think, where are we going? What are the main things at Mendez to address all of that? We created 4 main things. Every decision that we make is based off of these 4 items, and I'll go into detail about each one of them. So I'll start with Tier 1 instruction. And so this is a big one for me. And I think the biggest question that I want to answer for you tonight is, if we're being reflective on where we ended last year, where we started this year, what looks different at Mendez? So if you came now, what would look different to show you that we're really addressing those things? And so there's a lot that I would love to talk to you, but I don't have all that time. So I'll start with, our goal is really building capacity in our teachers. And so we have 3 coaches that are all bilingual, and they can serve as our dual language teachers and our mainstream teachers. Each one of them has 2 grade levels that they're serving. So we have a K1 coach, a 2-3, and a 4-5. These coaches go into every classroom at least once a week to provide observation and feedback and a next step. After that, their job is to support our teachers in implementing that action step. So that can look like planning, it can look like building resources together, it can look like them modeling together, or even going next door to the class next to them and seeing what the teacher is doing there. What we've really built a culture around is that we are our best resources, and so let's use each other as we grow. We're also having, our leadership team all goes on walks on Wednesdays, so we go together and see every room, and then we sit down and we talk about, if we're doing a targeted PLC, what is the best way to move all of our teachers in one goal or one targeted area. So we developed those together. The second, and that kind of goes through it, but pictures are better to look at. Our second main thing at Mendez is our foundational support. So this is how we're using our ESSER funds. As we're building capacity in Tier 1 instruction, what research says is that if kids aren't reading on grade level by 3rd grade, their chances of graduating go drastically down. And so as we're building that Tier 1 capacity in our teachers, now we can flip the intervention model. So 2 of our ESSER teachers and 1 in our ESSER IA are all being used for K3 literacy. They're pulling over 32 groups a day, just making up those phonics gaps, giving them what they need. Our instructional coaches are bilingual, so we're able to provide that intervention through them for all of our Spanish readers and writers. We can tell it's working because I made this in the middle of October, and at that time, 114 students had already moved at least 1 reading level, and we got to celebrate them, and it's already going up and up, so we're excited about that. Our other ESSER teacher is Ms. Roberts, and she's being used for 1st through 5th grade foundational skills in math. So we know if kids don't know place value, their operations, or number sense, it's really hard for them to be successful at anything else. So the first 9 weeks, that's all she worked on. Now we've got our first CA data, so she's pulling kids based on the TEAC gaps that they don't know, building those supporting standards so when they get in the classroom, they're able to be successful. The third main thing, oh, look at that. Okay. The third main thing at Mendez is enriching with equity. And there's all of these things we're doing, but for time's sake, I'll focus on one. Last year, being new to Mendez coming in, something that we spent a lot of time with parents talking about was their desire to have enrichment for their kids inside of the school day. We know that a lot of our kids weren't able to stay after school because of transportation or just anything else in life that's going on. And so we decided to build in Stryker Innovation Hour, which is clubs every Friday from 2 to 3. So our kids get clubs during the school day. 2 through 5 goes to clubs. We have photography, gardening, yoga, cultural cooking club, you name it, we probably have it. It's awesome. And so kids go and experience that. K1 at that time, personally, I think we have a lot to learn from Bonham. And so what Bonham does is they have this inquiry hour where kids just kind of explore and go. And so we do that with our K1 kids. I think if the pandemic taught us anything, those opportunities are extremely important for our kids. So every teacher in kinder and first has an activity they do, so it can be dramatic play, to planting little plants, to yoga, to Legos, and kids just go in and out. In this picture, you can see a kindergartner. He's taking a little token because he's moving it to say he's entering the room. So they go in and out. It's amazing what they can do. They're awesome. And so that's been something we're really excited about because it gives every single kid at Mendez the opportunity to be and experience that. And attendance on Fridays has gone up drastically. Imagine that. The fourth main thing at Mendez, and the most important for us, is well-being of students and families. So these are all things that we're doing. We have 100% morning meetings, and 100% of our kids are eating breakfast in the classroom. Again, Bonham implements zones of regulation. So what we realized was, if kids are already coming to us knowing that and doing that, why are we reinventing the wheel? So we do zones of regulation. Here, these pictures you can see in every single classroom at Mendez, we have a regulation zone. So kids are learning the curriculum in their morning meetings through guidance lessons with our counselor, and then they can always access that space if they need it. We also have CIS this year, so we're able to really wrap around our families and provide additional support that we haven't in the past. We also have the Thinkery, which is a restorative process. So it's no longer consequence-based discipline. What that looks like is it's not about the behavior, it's about the learning environment. So if the learning environment is disrupted, we, our social worker, our counselor, or one of our admin, go and we just pull kids and have one-on-one reflections with them. In kindergarten, that can look like looking at pictures, saying, hey, this is how I was feeling before this happened. This is what happened. This is what I'm going to do in the future. And building the capacity for our kids to be successful in coping and regulating those behaviors. So these are the things that I feel like we're continuously doing and we're continuously reflecting on and measuring our progress and seeing if we need to adjust. So looking at our CAs, looking at our tiered services, ensuring that we have that attendance rate still going up, our discipline infractions continuing to decrease. And so we're constantly looking at these things as a team and reflecting and just getting 1% better every day. So that's what's going on at Mendez. Any questions?
Thank you. I was so glad that y'all were able to do Reading Mania again this year in a safe way. It was terrific. And I don't know if it's tied into what you're doing with the continuation of the bottom methods, which I love. I'm a big fan of the play and inquiry. I wish we could do that K-12. I think it would benefit high schoolers also in their own way, but anyhow. But I really, I read with a great group of first graders, and I don't know if it's, there's a causality here or not, but they were super curious and inquisitive, and they were asking great questions, and they were making great comments about the story in our conversation, so it was super. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Superintendent Cardona. My name is Cash Greathouse, and I'm the proud principal at Rodriguez Elementary. Here with me today, I couldn't let this night or this year get over with without introducing my brand new assistant principal, Ms. Jean Hagugi. So let's go ahead and get started. So at Rodriguez, we believe that we should provide a holistic education that is personalized to the individual learner, preparing all students to become leaders within their families, communities, and of their own learning. So how we go about doing this is through our strong starts, our mentoring, and our project-based personalized learning. Our strong starts begin with Rodriguez Reads. It's a K-5 social and emotional learning program that we implement across the campus with a strong emphasis on literacy. We also do a very good job of integrating our fine arts and our physical activity into our classrooms through activities built into lesson plans, in addition to after-school clubs and UIL. We've also included a wellness room, not only for students, wellness and motor lab, but also for staff to be able to blow off some steam, rejuvenate after a long workday. It's been a very big hit currently this year. We also are, in our 4th and 5th grade, we focus a lot on our mentoring program. That is through our Summit Learning. Every student in 4th and 5th grade has a mentor on campus. They meet with them each and every week. They talk about goal setting, creating plans, providing immediate supports for academic and non-academic areas. So students build these relationships throughout the course of the year with those mentors that guide their learning throughout the year. And then through our project-based personalized learning, 58% of our K-3 teachers are certified PBL curriculum writers, and 100% of our 4th and 5th grade teachers have been trained in our Summit Learning programs. So some campus data strengths and growth opportunities. In our NWA map and our progress monitoring, 75% of our kindergarten cohort are at or above level in their English language arts acquisition. And so that's a huge shout out to our bottom pre-K teachers and staff members and principal there doing that hard work with those littles to bring them to us at grade level. For math, we are tracking our students' math CAs and checking for understanding in our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and our students are doing that tracking on their own. Some areas of growth for us. Just like my colleagues before me, and as a district, we are trying to improve in our literacy acquisition. And so we at Rodriguez are working tirelessly to try and increase our percentage of K-5 students that are reading on grade level. We're also trying to increase our projected STAR achievement levels in all student groups with an emphasis on our SPED population. Our ESSER supports, we currently have 3 ESSER teachers. We have one ESSER teacher that focuses math and ELA for K through 2. She focuses through K through 2, and she also does our remote conferencing for students that have gotten COVID. Another one of our ESSER teachers is now inside the classroom and helping with leveling out a classroom. So she's helping us in a 2nd grade classroom. She's a 2nd grade teacher currently. And our 3rd one, it was Miss Agugi, but she got promoted to our assistant principal. So we are in search of our 3rd ESSER teacher to hire. They work with our CISs in our tier 2 and 3 supports for the current one that we have. So she's got a wicked schedule right now, but she loves it. You can ask her. So at Rodriguez, we believe everyone at Rodriguez deserves a learning experience that meets their individual needs, and that's everyone. So we do this through weekly PLCs to improve our practice and engage in structured coaching cycle, and monthly campus-based PD opportunities listed there, and Rodriguez University. It's something we coined, and it's going on 2 years now, in which our teachers, after the long work year ends, they participate in professional development for up into a week. And those areas right there, Summit Learning, PBL curriculum, writing, You Teach, Reading Math Academies, they have all dedicated their time after the school year is over to help get prepared for the next year. So our campus goals, our 3 campus goals this year are deeper learning and academic rigor, data-driven and data-informed practices to make data-inspired decisions. Now, what that is pulling data is one thing, but taking that data and making an impactful difference with our students and how that impacts the day-to-day classroom rotations and instruction that goes on inside the classroom. That's what we're working on through PLCs, as well as developing our student agency and ownership. Really giving our students and allowing our students to be the drivers of their own learning, to know what their strengths are, what their areas of growth are, and to do that through interest-based activities. This last thing that I have here, this is a student and staff survey that was taken last year, right before the end of the school year. Rodriguez Elementary was one school in Texas to receive a New Schools Grant in 2019. It was the only school in Texas to receive that, and we are in a cohort of 68 other schools across the United States. And this cohort all took these student and teacher SEL surveys. And without digging deeper into it, if you can just look at the larger numbers on there, the 4.3, the 3.7, all of those numbers to the right of those are a comparison group. And overall, Rodriguez, in comparison to our comparison group of 68 other schools across the United States, did really well in terms of the types of culture that we have at Rodriguez, the type of school community that we have built not only with our students but with our staff, and we look forward to taking it again in this upcoming spring semester to see any differences, to see where areas of growth and areas of improvement. What I will say is if it is a 3.6 or above, that means that 90 percent or more indicated a positive interaction with that survey question. So that's a very, very great thing that we shared with teachers, we've shared with students, and allowed teachers to share those with students. Now, the 8 to 10% that did not meet in there, we want 100%. So we're working hard to try and ensure that that population, or that small select percentage of students that we aren't hitting or aren't reaching, finding out what it is that we need to do to reach them, to have their experience just as well as the rest of the students and teachers at Rodriguez Elementary. But that is all I have today. Thank you all very much. Do you have any questions?
Questions? I will say that I brag on all of our schools for various reasons, but I've had occasion over the since probably school started, to talk to several families from outside of the community who have elementary school students who have asked me about my experience with my students in elementary schools. And I always tell them, go look at the Trace community, go check, if they're looking for a house, go check it out and ask to take a tour of Rodriguez and see what's going on that campus, and look at the beautiful campus that it is and the innovative ways that it's being used. And then let's have a conversation. So.
Yes, ma'am. When we started, it was, as you all know, it was 283 students. We hit approximately 400. We took a dip during COVID, but we got an insurge right after COVID, and we have classrooms filling up, teachers coming over. So it's good to see that movement across the campus.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, the three of you.
Should we do the attendance update and then take a break? Good. Are we okay? Okay.
I'll be quick. Good evening. Good evening, School Board Trustees and Dr. Cardona, Superintendent. My name is Rose Pearson. I'm the Director of Pupil Personnel and Student Support Services. So our attendance from the start of the school year, August 23rd, through last Friday, November 9th, for the district was at 90.82%. You will have in your handouts the absenteeism truancy documentation handbook. That has prevention practices that we use across all of our campuses in the district, including the conference and agreement forms that we use when we're meeting with students and families, our expectations for communicating the importance of school attendance. All of our schools get this training up front. All of our schools also work with their attendance campus committees that are trained at the beginning of the school year. So just to highlight some of our processes and our procedures, we do have 2 district case managers that are working with our campuses. One of them is exclusively working here with the San Marcos High School, Mr. Mario Hernandez, and then Ms. Natasha Pedrasso is supporting both of our middle schools, and then they both support the feeder elementaries to those middle schools. We also have our parent liaisons who are fabulous that work with the attendance committees, as well as our school administrators. They all dedicate at least one administrator. In some cases, it's our principals. In some cases, it's an assistant principal. And then, of course, our Gear Up coordinators support attendance here at San Marcos High School. So along with the attendance campus committee, what their responsibilities are is to monitor attendance and chronic absences using data. So they will pull their reports from our eSchool system. They meet with our students, with parents and our families to identify barriers and create an attendance plan. Sometimes that needs to be very personalized, so sometimes our parent liaisons will work on a needs assessment because sometimes the barriers may be basic necessities. Our counselors and our SEL counselors, our CIS, Community and School, has been a great resource. And then we also have a partnership with Greater Youth San Marcos Council, and we do referrals to those different, whether they work in our schools or whether it's an outside agency. And then again, those family needs assessments. Our campuses, our administrators are doing a tremendous job celebrating good attendance campus-wide. And they also celebrate improved attendance for individual students. That goes back to those individual meetings where they create a plan. They can provide mentors for chronically absent students. Sometimes the mentors are campus teachers. Sometimes they're the Gear Up coordinators. Sometimes they're the attendance case managers. Sometimes they're central office folks. We have mentors as well. They do home visits. Sometimes the home visits consist of a success support team, and I'm sure Mr. Greathouse, if you would have let him, would have talk to you in great detail. Those take longer. Sometimes those can take up to an hour because we take a counselor, we take attendance case managers. Sometimes I attend those, and we really just try to get to the barriers of what's going on. And then, of course, we file truancy with courts if necessary, and that's after we have exhausted all remedies and we're just not getting that reciprocal partnership with the families, but we do everything that we possibly can to build those relationships, because we truly believe that in order for us to improve attendance matters. It's all based on relationships and trust. Do you have any questions for me?
Did you say it was 90.8%?
90.82%.
That's for this school year?
From the beginning up until last Friday. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have them broken down by elementary, middle, and high school?
Yes, we do. So San Marcos High School was at 87.09%, same time frame. Goodnight was at 92.96%. Miller was at 91.86%. Bowie was at 95.65%. Crockett at 91.02%. De Zavala at 92.29%. Travis at 91.46%. Hernandez at 93.92%. Mendez, 92.52%. Bonham, 89.62%. Rodriguez, 92.16%.
So that's, I mean, we would expect that the high school would be a little lower, and we would expect that the preschool would be a little lower, but it seems like through the middle school and the elementary schools that are averaging out about the same, and it seems high for elementary and middle school. And so I think I have sort of an anecdotal sense of narratives around the preschool and the high school, but I don't understand. Do we have a narrative around what's going on like at the elementary schools?
So we're still in a pandemic, and I'm just going to speak honestly and transparency.
Yeah.
And so a lot of families are still erring on the side of caution. So if their child is not feeling well, or has stomach ache, asthma, coughing, still wearing the mask, some of those are a little longer prolonged absences than typically would be if we were not in the pandemic.
Okay. And so I know, we've already talked about having done the vaccine clinic. Could we do just another round of messaging, but coming into the holidays for all of the students, and really just asking teachers and administrators, to do it in as nonpartisan and just, from the health standpoint of trying to get as many students vaccinated as possible, so that our attendance numbers in this coming back after the holidays hopefully can come back up.
Yes, no, we definitely feel positive about that, and I think Saturday's clinic shows our families are wanting, so for sure.
And I just think if everybody, possible could just reinforce it in just like straight medical terms, right? Like this is just about the health of kids and keeping them in school. That would be great, so that we can have as most successful spring semester as possible, which I think we all really want. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Ms. Pearson,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you. Can you give me a perspective as the new board member on the block? Are these numbers 90% attendance? Is that what we saw before COVID? Is that a normal number?
Actually, I have last year's percentage, and we're a little below last year's percentage, but what we have to keep in mind last year is that we also had remote learning as an option. So we were able to, TA allowed us to count remote learning. So last year around this time, we were at about 94% overall. Prior to that, I'd have to pull a longitudinal, but we are about at that 92, 93, 94% district-wide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Thank you for that perspective.
we
I
had
appreciate
95 or 96 as a goal at one point that we were getting close to.
Correct.
So,
Yes, pre-pandemic, correct.
depending on where we were, which
Okay.
campus.
Our goal is, that?
Above
96?
95%.
Above 95 is our goal.
And
Thank you.
we were getting there and then going over in some campuses. So this is a significant,
Okay,
Elementaries were at
change.
97.
yeah,
97, 98%
yeah.
in some cases, yeah.
Trustee Arredondo?
Thank you, President Halsey. Ms. Pearson, I asked for this presentation 2 months ago, but I'm glad, based on timing and some other events and occurrences, it has allowed us to have some more longitudinal data to have a more robust conversation. I'm excited to hear about the attendance case managers that we've deployed across the ISD. But seeing at, I guess, what would some could characterize as the severity of our absenteeism for a number of reasons, and because the only information that, President Halsey kind of referenced and that I can reference is anecdotal, I'm concerned about the caseload of those two caseworkers that we're essentially asking them to, identify not only the root causes of that absenteeism, but to help, address those root causes. So as we go through tonight's agenda, let my colleagues be aware that this is the first time I'm going to reference, front-loading ESSER funds or even fund balance to address some of the issues that we see occurring as we emerge out of the pandemic. I think, Ms. Woody anecdotally shared, their emphasis and really focus on a subpopulation of their campus when it came to literacy, saw immediate gains and returns for those students. And so I'm going to make the argument tonight that we continue to do that when it comes to things like absenteeism, especially as we see how many of our students are gone. We know that they need to be here to learn, and so again, just thank you for this presentation and the information, and I look forward to these ongoing conversations when it comes to what we can do to hopefully, get our students back into the classroom and back to learning. So thank you.
You're very welcome, and I just wanted to also just emphasize that we also work with E3 Alliance, and we're in a cohort with many other districts, and they're facing similar challenges, but it's great that we're able to collaborate. And the high school is working very proactively. I mean, we're meeting with families every day here at the high school. Thank you.
Thank you. Should we go ahead with the construction update, please?
Okay, good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Cardona. I'll be delivering the November construction update. The budget, we're still hovering around the $5 million mark. We did close out the high school project. We received the final payout from Weber, so that number there on the high school is reflected as far as paying Weber out the remaining retainage that we had. We're just waiting on a final, actually we received the final invoice from the architect, and then we have some work to do on the pond. And then we still have a little bit of technology money, but we should return, we should be under budget at the high school of about $50,000 that will add to the overall savings. The remaining projects, obviously Miller, De Zavala, and we still have a little bit of technology money that we're going to spend. As far as Miller, still making a lot of progress with Miller, phase 1. We saw quite a bit of progress on the millwork. We had Weber reach out to some additional installers. We still are missing some items, and we have some non-conforming work that we'll have to address, and we will do that. The punch list, we get a daily update from Weber on the punch list. Mr. Duvall heads over there every day, looking at progress. We got into a couple of weeks where we were actually meeting with subcontractors directly to find out what their plans were. That seemed to drive some results. And then the elevator badge, we're just communicating or trying to connect dates with the installer and TKE Dyson, which has the elevator contract. As far as phase 3A and 3B, which was the summer renovation, the dance room was delivered to us in time for school, as y'all remember. We did get the TCO approved on November 1st. Furniture, floor waxing, all was done before November 9th or on November 9th. And as of last Thursday, the art rooms are being utilized, and I talked to Ms. Hart this evening, and it looks like the science labs are going to be used. I think we had some activity in there today. They'll be used tomorrow for testing. So we're in that space. We still have some mill work that's outstanding. We have a punch list that's outstanding. The retention pond, a lot of work has been done on that, and then landscaping, which is being done this week. Courtyard 1, which is in the back of the school, we have removed that scope of work from Weber. We'll do it ourselves, not ourselves, but we'll find a subcontractor to do it. All it is dealing with drainage. But we didn't want Weber to continue to drag their feet, and we needed to move forward with it. So it's not a lot of work. We'll have somebody in there to get that done quickly. I know we have a tour tomorrow, 1 o'clock at De Zavala, and then we'll be at 2:30 at Miller, but I did provide some pictures for those of you who cannot make it. The picture on the left is the main corridor looking into the art rooms, and then the picture on the right is the science labs before the furniture was delivered last week. That's the dance room. It's been completed. We've got a dance teacher that's thrilled about everything about that room and the way it turned out. And then there's the entry. The outside seating is extremely nice seating outside, right outside the front office. And then we have the lettering Doris Miller Middle School that was placed on the school itself. As far as De Zavala, not a lot of update here. We're still have some activities for December. The only update I wanted to provide you is the canopy for the cafeteria. We did get a price, and we do need to move forward on this. It's about $65,000, but we have it in the budget. The other big piece is the additional parking area that we're waiting on, and if we're out there tomorrow, I can sort of explain why we need to do this. It's going to be a big ticket item, so we're going to have to make everybody needs to be on board with that decision. But after tomorrow's visit, you'll get a better idea of why we need to do that. So that's really all I have. I'm looking forward to if y'all can't make it tomorrow, I'm certainly available at any time to go and tour, except for Thursday, sorry. But any questions?
Thank you. I toured De Zavala on Veterans Day, so that
came out nice.
It's just odd how amazing it looks. It's just fantastic.
Good.
Yeah, I was going to say that Mr. Hernandez gave me a lovely tour of DZ at the Veterans Day event, so I won't make it for that one. And I think you and I have something scheduled on Thursday at Miller. Was DZ one of the schools that we wanted to do an additional on our list of activities that we hope to, adjustments that we hope to make to some of our campuses and different things that we'll make with the surplus that we've retained? Is there an awning projected at DZ as well in the front?
There's, on the outdoor learning areas, there's not.
Okay, I guess I meant actually on the drop-off line. Is one of the elementary schools?
Oh, so on the parent
Mendez.
pickup line,
Yeah.
that's the canopy that I was talking
Yeah,
about.
okay, on the
As they're
parent
coming out of the cafeteria, we do need some cover in there.
Okay.
So that's the canopy that I'm making reference
Yeah,
to.
I sort of thought that. Thank you.
I'm very much looking forward to getting a full tour of both campuses, and I'll just share with you, my dad was here visiting me for a few weeks, and he was a 40-year high school career teacher, so he's been in some schools, and he had been taking the boys to school before and then picked them up this time, and he asked me if we'd torn down the whole middle school to rebuild that. He was just blown away by how spectacular it looked, and it's turned out great, so
Good.
thank you.
Thank you.
And the dual language ESL update?
All right, very good. So good evening, Superintendent Dr. Cardona, President Halsey, and Board of Trustees. My name is Monica Valadez. I am the Director of Bilingual and ESL Education, and I think I'm standing too close to this, so I'll do a quick update on both the bilingual and ESL programs that are district run, especially on the dual language, some updates on that, and then if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. This is a PDF, so I'm going to have to scroll down. Okay, there we go. So this is our program staff. Of course, I'm the director, and we have two coaches that work for the department. One focuses on dual language, so really at the elementary campuses right now. And then our ESL coach, who's a new hire, David Coronado, who just started 2 weeks ago, is focused on the ESL component, which is the secondary, although we do have ESL at the elementary, our larger population of ESL students at the secondary level, so he does focus on the secondary campuses, both middle schools and high school. And that is our number of teachers per campus. Those that are bilingual certified, most of them are bilingual certified. We do have one of our ESL teachers at Goodnight who is also bilingual certified. He's actually helping us out this year for a pilot in dual language, and I'll cover that a little bit too. So our programs, as you are well aware, we have a two-way dual language program, pre-K through fifth grade. So our fifth graders are our oldest cohort in the dual language program. They started when they were first graders, and that's when we started the program, initiated in 2017, 2018. And then we do have students who opt for the ESL program at the elementary schools. We don't have as many in the ESL. We have definitely a whole lot more in the dual language program, but we do have some in the ESL program. And then, of course, at our secondary level, we have ESL grades through 6th through 12th. And then we do have Newcomer. Newcomer is also ESL, but they're set aside. There are students who are immigrant students. For the first 2 years under TEA regulations, they qualify as immigrant status, and so they're provided additional provisions to help support their academic growth. So this year at Goodnight, we do have a dual language pilot, school pilot, just testing the waters in anticipation of our current fifth graders who are dual language, the first cohort, moving into sixth grade next year. So 27 sixth grade students from our previous bilingual program, the transitional program that graduated from fifth grade last year. So they are right now, a good portion of them are at Goodnight, attending Goodnight. And so we have 27 students that are in a pilot course, and this course is being offered in Spanish. It's World, Geography, and Cultures. That's being provided by the ESL teacher who is bilingual certified. So that's one of the caveats, the teacher has to be bilingual certified. The product that we bought is TCI History Alive. We had our coach, our specialist, review the product to make sure it was good product so that our students could utilize it. So right now, they were just delivered the textbook and the student workbook so that they can utilize, and the teacher has a curriculum for those students. So this is our program enrollment from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. Sorry for all the different colors, but trying to distinguish between our students who are receiving dual language services, those who are ESL services at the elementary campuses, and then of course the green with ESL from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. Currently in our dual language program, as you see towards the bottom of the matrix, we have 442 emergent bilinguals. That's the new term the TEA has adopted. So even I just recently noticed in our PEMS under eSchool, it's no longer LEP indicator, it's EB indicator, so considered emergent bilingual. And of course, that has a lot to do with the way we reference students, and it is a more equitable term because we see them as students who have the capacity to become bilingual because they already come with another language into our schools. And then our ESL numbers, 562. The total across programs is a little over 1,200. That does include our students who are native English speakers that apply to the dual language program. So there are 242 native English speakers, non-native Spanish speakers that are enrolled in our dual language program. Of importance, and I'll just briefly mention it, is the 65 and the 35% of the breakout between our dual language students who are native Spanish speakers and qualified as EB, and then our native English speakers who apply to the program, just because of the TEC regulation in terms of our bilingual program has to continue to serve the majority being EB students. So there's a 40%, it can be no more than 40% in our dual language program that serves the non-native Spanish speaker. If that makes sense, there's so many nons, and so I can definitely clarify. So my apologies, these numbers here in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade are going to be a little different than the handout you have, and I have extra copies if you would like that. And that's totally my fault on search queries in eSchool. After a while, those vector lines kind of all start running together. So my apologies, but these are updated numbers here, as you can see, in terms of our monitor status. And these are students who have already met the criteria to no longer be considered as learning the English language. They already have proficiencies across all 4 domains, speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And they've also shown proficiency in their reading STAR scores. So this is the number of students that we have on those monitor status. In terms of the 5th year monitor, so the 5th year monitor continues to be 5th year monitor from here on out until they finish at our high school. And that's simply for us to be able to continue to see where former students who were receiving ELS services are now taking advantage of, whether it's CTE, GT, et cetera, so that we can kind of see where they are pooling. So professional development, this is at the district, campus, and teacher level. So at the district, I'll only give you a couple of them. Right now, we're looking at redesigning our Newcomer Program. At the high school specifically, we have about 20-something, 24 students who are considered newcomer. So we are working to identify campuses, districts that have a program that we can go observe. I had a recommendation for another district, so we are already in contact with them. We're also part of a 50 district member think group with TEA, and this is around just newcomer programs and really kind of envisioning what those might look like to better serve our newcomer population. At the campus level, it's increasing the capacity. So our coaches are working to increase the capacity of the folks on campus to provide that in classroom support and help drive the rigor up. That's one of the things that we're really focusing on, is increasing the rigor and the understanding of what rigor is and how it looks within our lesson plans, but then also how it looks within our teaching and our learning stations that we have in our classrooms. The other focus is sheltering practices. Sheltering practices, if you're not familiar, has been around for so many years, I mean decades, right? Sheltering practices are really about making the content comprehensible. So what are strategies that will make your content comprehensible to students who are second language learners, but also for students who may not have that academic rigor language yet. And that could be whether the student is an English speaker or not an English speaker. It applies to all students. So sheltering practices, you'll see them in AVID, you'll see them in AVID Excel, you'll see them in so many of the blended learning, you'll see them in so many of the initiatives that we really need to focus on those particular strategies that increase the students' opportunity to comprehend exactly what the teacher is trying to teach across all core subjects. And then for the teacher, we're really focusing on language development, and I know we are the bilingual department, but really the 4 domains: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And I say this ad nauseum on our campuses, the importance of really those 4 domains, because we can't just hyper-focus on the reading if our students haven't developed an ear for the language or the ability to speak the language. To the extent that one is able to speak the language, you're able to read it, you're able to write it. So it all really joins all together, and we're really focusing on how our lesson plans show where the teacher is finding ways of really maximizing all those 4 domains. Are the students practicing the listening? Are they practicing the speaking, the reading, and the writing throughout the lesson? And also working with our teachers, some of them are departmentalized. So working with campuses whose teachers are departmentalized, because the core content areas also need to be language teachers. And so you're teaching language through science, you're teaching language through math, you're teaching language through social studies. So those 4 domains don't go away, and they're not relegated to the ELAR or SLAR teacher. So those are our main focus on professional development. Waivers, and so this year we have 13 teachers on a waiver. So this is an ESL waiver. So this means that there are some teachers who are teaching ELAR who are not ESL certified. And so we work with those teachers to make sure that they earn certification by the end of the school year. This year we'll focus on the ESL Supplemental 154, that's the Texas test that the teachers have to take. And we're going to hyper-focus on the test booklet, the test prep material. So our coach, Mr. Coronado, will be working alongside our CIS, Stephanie Mullenix, who focuses on ELAR, and in combination create a Canvas course that is self-paced for those teachers, but then include checkpoints so that the teachers are working through the components and then demonstrating mastery. And if they're not demonstrating mastery, then we'll provide additional targeted support and include in their practice tests prior to them signing up and taking the test. And then we provide a reimbursement for a past test. So $120 that we'll reimburse the teacher through our funds to encourage them to get ESL certified. And of course, we also have for new hires, HR has included for new hires, they have to be certified within 6 months of hire. So we are focused on those teachers as well. So additional resources and support. This year, we started going back to iStation. If some of y'all are been here for a while, y'all remember that we used to have iStation. iStation has made a lot of improvements. One of the reasons we got iStation was because Lexia, which is one of the products that our campuses have, is not available in Spanish. And so the iStation makes up the difference to make sure that our students who are in dual language programming have access to an adaptive program that serves both the development of English and the development of Spanish proficiencies in literacy and language. Two of the main contracts that we're working with is Dr. Kennedy, who is a dual language consultant, has been really wonderful and is now helping coordinate learning walks on our campuses to make sure that we know and understand full well what we're looking for within our dual language classrooms, provide that feedback to teachers. And so she's increasing our capacity. She's focusing on me, on our coaches, and on our administrators to really go in and observe and be able to provide feedback specific to dual language development within our classrooms. And then Dr. Celaya is working more with the ESL component. And so he's working really the trauma-informed education, the SEL component, and then the culturally relevant pedagogy. And he's working with a cohort of secondary teachers. They just completed their second session with him, and they'll have a third session. And we're wanting to bring together not only those teachers, but and I'll speak in a little bit about it, we had a culture camp. So we also had a culture camp with students, secondary students, to kind of bring them together so that the teachers are learning from the students, which I think will be super powerful. And then, of course, I mentioned the Newcomer Academy, one of 50 ELAs participating with TEA to really kind of increase our capacity to offer a more robust program for our newcomers. We also have a position posted for bilingual education compliance specialist, and that person will really help us focus on aligning practices, and this is straight up compliance, LPAC, TELPAS, getting our coding, PEEMS, folders, making sure that all our I's are dotted, our T's are crossed, and this is just documentation for our students receiving EB services. And then just some quick celebrations. We focus in bilingual education, ESL education, try to focus really heavy on the equity, the cultural equity, the racial equity. We hosted a group of principals this summer. We did a race and culture equity learning exchange over at the LBJ Museum downtown over 2 days, and really was able to explore the area of MLK. Because we know culture is not confined to the Latino community. So really culture and race is about across all races and not just in regards to Spanish speaking. And then we had the culture camp, which is the one at the bottom right. So those are a group of students, 40 secondary students that attended the culture camp with Dr. Celaya over at the activity center. So that was at the end of September. And so this is the group of students that we're going to coordinate a panel discussion so that the students are the panel and the teachers are learning from the students. And so that will happen in January or February. We're identifying what day will work best for all those teachers. And then to the far left, that's our teacher cohort. So those are the teachers that are working with Dr. Celaya to work really on understanding the newcomer experience and how to best support them in their classroom. And just some more celebrations. Of course, I always celebrate our teachers. Our teachers are awesome. They participated in a dual language conference, our first one. I want to point that out because this was a regional conference, so we invited some teachers from Lockhart and some teachers from Seguin. This was the first regional dual language conference. We're hoping to give it wings and then continue it to build the attention around how to do dual language effectively within the region, and then hopefully attract, because one of the things our greatest struggles right now is identifying staff that is appropriately certified to the Central Texas area. So we're hoping that the dual language conference will do that and attract people from different places, especially like San Antonio, the Houston area, but also the Valley, to come to Central Texas and participate as dual language teachers. And then, of course, the kids. Who doesn't love the kids? So there's a picture of one of our dual language classrooms. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Trustee Hansen?
Back on the program staff, I just want to understand the number of teachers at Goodnight Miller and the high school.
Yes, ma'am.
How do those teachers, are they teaching one subject area, or are they going in and assisting teachers, or how are they?
So a little bit of both. So these are what are considered our ESL teachers at those secondary campuses. They, say for example, at the high school, the teacher teaches the ESOL classes for our newcomers, the English ELA basically for our newcomers, so it teaches ESOL 1, ESOL 2. And then there's actually 2 teachers here, so they also assist in push and support. But here at the high school, they also have 2 IAs that help with push and support. And then at each of the middle schools, they have an ESL person, an ESL teacher. They focus also, as mentioned, they instruct, they do a English language development course for their newcomers, and then they do push and support for other core content areas, and especially focused on prioritizing our EB students based on their proficiencies. So if they know that the newcomer is taking algebra, then they're pushing in to help support that student in that language.
But we have classroom teachers that are also ESL.
Of course,
Okay.
yes, and yes, of course. And the focus of our ESL coach, Mr. Coronado, is really to increase the capacity of our ESL coaches to also provide the additional guidance when they're doing their PLCs. It's all about additional and raising capacity because we just don't have sufficient staff at each of our campuses to really focus on push and support across the campus. So it's really about increasing our capacity. So our ESL coach is also going to be working right now. He's done 2 weeks of observations going in. I'll kind of get an idea. And so right now he's going to focus on tested subjects at the high school, and then provide for other subjects, sheltering, practice, PD.
Thank you. I thought that was it, but I wanted to make sure.
Absolutely.
Trustee Salmi?
Hi, thank you very much for this presentation. I had a couple of clarifying questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a number for the number of students in your newcomer program right now, or is that a number you could send me later?
Yeah, I do. Let me. Sorry. So we have, currently we have 43 total, and that's across the district. That is 24, so the majority of them are at our high school. And then we have 6 at our middle schools, and then 22 at our elementary schools.
Is that a number that tends to fluctuate in your experience in the district, or is that a pretty consistent?
It's been a pretty consistent, and I mean, my tenure has been pandemic, but it's pretty consistent so far, about 25-ish at the high school level. And then at our elementary, so the majority of them are from Spanish-speaking countries. So the majority of them do go into our dual language program, which of course has the rich support in the language. At our secondary campus, that's not the case. They also continue to be largely Spanish-speaking. So we really focus in terms of right now, in terms of the focus on Newcomer Academy, that will be for the secondary level, specifically the high school.
Interesting. So, and then, okay, bilingual exception was one of the terms you had,
Yes.
and you explained what the waiver was. I just was curious what the bilingual exception meant.
So, but the bilingual exception is, so the ESL waiver is when the teacher, ELA teacher is not ESL certified. So the bilingual exception would be if our, like say we had a dual language classroom that's delivering SLAR, Spanish language arts and reading, and the teacher is not bilingual certified. So that would be an exception. Right now, we have all our dual language classrooms covered by bilingual, appropriately certified teachers.
Okay, and the last one is the term LEA, which is in one of your presentations. Oh, Newcomer Academy are one of 50 LEAs.
Local education agencies.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was all.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
I have, sorry, I had a couple of questions, and it's sort of a 3-part question. So my first part of it is, tell me what happens with the students who are in 5th grade this year that when they move into 6th grade next year that are the original dual language cohort. What will the school day, what does that look like for them next year? But in part of that too, I'm wondering, when we started that program, we had conversations at the time about how students in that dual language program would appear to be lagging behind their peers in subject areas through a certain trajectory, until which point then they would hopefully catch up and then ideally surpass in many cases, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so I'm wondering if how the last year and a half has affected those students in the dual language program and also the students that are in the Newcomer Program. And how fast or how quickly or how much are they adapting and rebounding now that we're more in person and we're back to a more normal day? Does that make sense?
Yes. So for our students that are at the elementary campuses, our focus really is on the early literacy, as Principal Woody was mentioning, really focusing on that early literacy and working with our teachers to understand. So our consultant, Dr. Kennedy, has really been focusing on what is it about the 4 components of language, and then also phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, and then the distinguishing pieces when you're teaching the student to read in Spanish as opposed to teaching the student to read in English. And so really, for our teachers is making that connection with our students, knowing the families. So we're big on you need to know the families as well in order to provide the best instruction for our students. We're also focusing on the sheltering practices across the board, not only in our ESL classrooms, but also in our dual language classroom. Sheltering instructions, by and far, whether the teacher is instructing in Spanish or the teacher instructing in English, is really about making the content comprehensible and figuring out what are the strategies that best work for those students. So we're really focusing on that. So we have seen some lag, right, as you were mentioning, in terms of that development. But we've also seen significant connections, like belongingness, right? So when the students have come back to the campus, they reconnect to the teacher and to the peers. And so we feel like that belonging and that connectedness to one another. We've walked into, say, our 5th grade classrooms that are dual language, have been since 1st grade, where the students are reading and writing in English and in Spanish, and then and then providing that support for their bilingual pairs. Excuse me. So moving forward, we have that pilot over at Goodnight. That is one of our world geography sections, two sections that are taught in Spanish. For dual language pathways by TEC regulations, in order to be considered a dual language pathway, you have to have 2 courses per grade level, so 2 courses in 6th, 7th, and 8th. So we're working with our campus administrators to figure out, okay, do an inventory of our staff at the secondary campuses to see who's best prepared to do that. So we potentially would have a bilingual exception if we have, say, a secondary teacher who speaks Spanish but didn't do a bilingual certification because that was in their background. If they're, core content in history or core content in something else. And so we could do a bilingual exception and help them, just like our ESL waiver teacher gets the ESL supplemental, our bilingual, our dual language at the secondary would get a bilingual supplemental. So that might be a reality for us, especially if we want to continue the dual language program, and I know that our parents do want to continue the dual language program into secondary campuses. And we have 81 students currently in those 5th grade classrooms that will be going up to middle school.
And so are you currently envisioning that it would be just at Goodnight, or do you think that we'd be able to offer the students those opportunities both at Miller and Goodnight? Or we're not sure yet?
I think it'll all depend on the inventory and kind of getting a good idea of our human capacity, our human resource at each of the campuses. And then speaking with Mr. Sanders, and then kind of figuring out as well with our campus principals. I have had a couple of conversations with some parents that have called me and said, hey, are we continuing this? Because we want our kids to participate. So I would expect almost 100% of parents in those 5th grade classrooms are going to want something. We've also considered maybe doing where a teacher travels between both campuses. And so the kids can participate in their home campus. It's just the teacher would go to each of the campuses and provide the section.
Well, I know that the pandemic and when everybody went remote, that presented particular challenges in your program, and I've talked to a number of parents and students in the program, and they're just really pleased to be back and so happy about it, and I think it's a really tremendous success. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Should we take a quick break? That clock is not correct. It is 7:28. Let's come back at 7:35. Thanks, everybody.
This time, I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Denise Garcia, our director, and Mr. Mike Doyle, our director of federal programs.
Good evening, board. Dr. Cardona, superintendent. I'm Mike Doyle, director of state and federal programs. Along with me is Denise Garcia, director of our finance program. So tonight, in answer to some questions that came through agenda prep, we wanted to present to everyone the budget planning process. So in this presentation, you'll see that we'll cover the review of the settle-up process from 2021. We'll check in on the 21-22 revenue projection. We'll discuss a little bit of our ESSER discussion. We'll discuss a little bit about our ESSER grants 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll also discuss priorities that we can use to move through into the 22-23 budget process. So first thing to consider is the review of the settle-up process from 2021. So settle-up is a process that TEA follows in the fall of every school year, where the actuals and the outcomes are collected through summer PEIM submission, and then the final funding amount from the prior year is determined. So a few things to think about, right? The settle-up happens every year. And traditionally, there's not a lot of corrections or overages to be determined. But there is a variant with the 2021 school year. Two things to consider, and we'll talk about a little bit further in this presentation, is the tax collections that the ISD actually collected versus projected, and then also the hold harmless issue from the 2021 school year. This is an example of the summary of finance report that you would find on TEA. So just to give you an example of the near final process, and I apologize for it, it's scrambled, but you can see that the amount of nuance, if you will, in this process is tremendous from TEA. Based on PEIM submission data throughout the year, and as that information comes to districts, we're able to see these near settle final ups or preliminary settle ups. As of the 12th of November, we're still in a near final. So again, looking at our settle up process from 2021, this graph shows some key information. So first, if you look at the line item where it says local intermediate sources, that's our taxes, right? So the school district received $1.4 million in tax collection above the projection, right? So there's a few things to consider in this. So in the spring of 20 was when this work was done. This also coincided with COVID pandemic, so there are a lot of things to consider. So first, when you're looking at tax revenue, the district did set base their projection on 97%, which is atypical. Usually it's 99%. But the reason for that is, again, COVID projections, or COVID, businesses closing, the struggles that families were facing. Like I mentioned earlier, we actually did collect over the 97% and actually collected the 99%. Also, some other things to consider are that when this projection was certified, it was only a projection that was certified, the 97%. And that Hays County, their appraisal district, actually had some trouble meeting their deadlines as well. So that further caused that delay in 97 versus 99%. The other thing to consider is the second line item, if you will, is the state program revenue. That's our state aid. So we receive state aid based on our students, their characteristics, other factors, if you will, such as and how it plays in with our tax collections that we project, right? So you can see here that we actually received a little over $1 million more than what we expected based on our projections. So you have to ask yourself, is this an issue or is this a problem? Authentically, it reflects the changes and the challenges that all districts, especially San Marcos, faced in 2021. It's not an issue if districts do identify these overages and ensure that this is left unspent and that it's protected in the reconciliation process. Further, just as a note, the overage was recognized and reported in our third quarter quarterly, and annual reports to the board revenue approached, I apologize. The overage was reported in the third quarter quarterly report. So the other issue that we wanted to talk about as well is in the review of the settle-up process is the hold harmless as a result of the 2021 school year. So TEA maintained the funding levels for school year 2021 based on student counts and information and data from 1920. So as we move forward, and you'll see this is spoken to when we talk our ESSER grants and the timelines in which districts receive their ESSER grants, TEA is expecting districts to use their ESSER 2 grant to make up that hold harmless gap, if you will. And you'll see that as we move forward in the 21-22 projection. So this information here, again, as we discuss our review of our settle-up process from 2021, culminates in the numbers that we've already discussed, right? Our foundation overpayment is 2.5 roughly, and then our hold harmless gap is 1.9 roughly, totaling up to about 4.5. Keep in mind a few things. These are overage payments based on the discrepancy, if you will, of the 97 versus 99%, and the actual receiving of payments based on our student information, right? We did not, or nor will we pay anything back. This is just the gap that will be made up with ESSER 2 and also going forward in the budgeting process. As we check in on that budgeting process or the revenue projection process, if you will, for 21-22, this graph is really key information. So if you look here, you can see the comparison of enrollment versus ADA. So if you look at the far left column, 2021, the actual student counts through the March 21, you can see that our enrollment was a little over 7,900, with our ADA being a little over 7,100. The projection, if you will, for 21-22, based in April of 21, our projected enrollment was 8,149 with an ADA of 7,428. And you can see that that culminates to a projected revenue of a little over 81, almost 82 million, 81.9, if you will, million in projected revenue. So we took a little bit, we wanted to look and massage these numbers, and not massage, excuse me, we wanted to use this data current and see how does that influence our projection going forward into 21-22. So a few things I wanted to point out. After the first 6 weeks ADA, you can see that enrollment is 8187 with the first 6 weeks ADA being 7,058. And you can see the difference in how that influences our projected revenue. And it comes out to that 77.9 million. Now, a few things to consider. First, the ADA is taken based on refined ADA. So it's not just 1 6 weeks, it's a multiple average or your best 6 weeks ADA. So the second 6 weeks closed on Friday. The new ADA number for the second 6 weeks that I got this morning is over 7,200. So we're seeing that ADA increase in comparison. So when you input that updated ADA, it does bring up that number significantly. The other thing to consider is, based on the information that we've heard prior to this presentation and the work that the school district is doing, we're seeing those gains, and I really do believe that we'll see that ADA increase and get closer to that projected number and not that 7,000 number. And one other thing I want to mention too, it's quite interesting. Thursday of last week, the TEA announced what they're calling the 21-22 operational minutes adjustment. So it's not a hold harmless, but for school districts who are experiencing that loss in ADA in the first 6 weeks of this current year, TEA is going to provide support to help that make up that gap. Because it was just announced, there's some methodology and some more information that school districts are going to learn about going forward, but it is something to consider as we move forward in this process. The next part of the discussion is ESSER and our ESSER grants. And so going back to the timeline, you can see we have ESSER Grant 1, 2, and 3. ESSER Grant 1 was announced, I would say, roughly April-ish of 20. The grant application was submitted in June of 20, and the grant period actually got extended to September 2022. However, we worked really diligently to identify those costs and also support our students throughout the COVID pandemic of last year. And we've been able to exhaust those resources with our ESSER 1. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, it's very interesting, right? So you can see how the timelines are switched. If you remember back in June, I came to the board to discuss our ESSER 3 grant, and you can see that we actually submitted our application in June of 21. This grant does roll to, the grant period ends September 23 with a carryover to 24. That's why we've been actually moving on ESSER 3 quicker than ESSER 2. The reason being is, and this speaks to the hold harmless makeup that TEA is asking districts to do with their ESSER 2. Their plan actually went all the way up to the United States Department of Education, so districts didn't get their actual application until August. So we submitted our ESSER 2 application August 21. That grant goes to September 22, carrying over to 23. And you can see our allocations, right? ESSER 2 is $7.3 million. With as of November 21, we have a remaining balance of 4.5 in ESSER 2. And again, our allocation 16.4 in ESSER 3 with a remaining of 14.3. But there's also something to consider about ESSER 3. TEA released only 2/3 of that 16.4. There were still parts of the ESSER 3 plan that had to be approved by the federal government. Here in December, districts will then amend the application to then pick up the additional 1/3. So that's why you see there's only a difference of roughly $1.5–2 million. We're working on 2/3 right now. But it is a guarantee we'll get that amendment, and it's just going forward. So with that all being said, are there any questions or any thoughts as we move forward in our process into setting priorities for 22-23 budget?
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned a newly announced initiative by the state that was not the same as the hold harmless, but that would affect our income. Can you explain that a little more, and when we will know more about it?
Yes, ma'am. That was the it's called the 21-22 Operational Minutes Adjustment, and like I said, it's a newly announced plan from TEA that will help LEAs or districts. Right, it'll support those districts who are experiencing that ADA loss from the first 6 weeks of this current school year. So with that additional support, there's still much to be learned about this program, but it will be a benefit if we see a gap, if we see that discrepancy in a refined ADA from the first 6 weeks.
Okay. And is it an accurate description of the hold harmless to say that the state kept our funding levels the same during the COVID pandemic, but when we had fewer students enrolled and all of those other things that they use to measure how much money they're going to get us, when those metrics weren't met, they're now expecting us to use the ESSER funds to make up that gap?
Correct. That is correct to say. The ESSER 2 grant, the expectation from TA is that districts use their ESSER 2 grant to make up that hold harmless.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Doyle and Ms. Garcia, and I appreciate Dr. Barton's work also in putting this together and answering the questions that I had about the $4.5 million and how that was reported out. And I've got some things that I want to talk about in terms of financial reporting going forward that I'll hold for another time. But I appreciate all of that explanation and how comprehensive and thorough it was, and I understand now the process better and the timelines. I still have concerns. I know, Mr. Doyle, you said that the settle-up process, generally isn't this rocky, but in the 6 years that I've been on the board, at least the first few years, it was often rocky because they would grossly underestimate or grossly overestimate, and we were sort of playing this game of catch-up, which the biennium was, the finance law in the biennium was supposed to fix that, right? And then obviously now we've gone through this whole pandemic and that put everything out of whack. And so we're now once again in an adjustment period. So I'm wondering, one, if you have any sense of, will this be steadier next year? Or is this something that I know you you don't have a magic 8 ball. Yes. But if you have any thoughts on that, I also want to make clear, just to reiterate what we just said, is that the SR2 funds, those are basically invisible. That's just going to our operating procedure to shore up what we didn't get from the state. That's not really any extra money to us. That just puts back into the budget what TA didn't.
A part of the SR2 is making up that hold harmless, because our hold harmless is not the entire allocation of SR2.
Okay, but a significant portion. It's not that we can do new things because we still have to pay for the other things that we were doing previously with that money, right?
Yes.
Okay, so then the other point, and I know that you just talked about the operational minutes adjustments, which I will be hopeful that will come through, because I want to make sure that I understand this correctly, that if that doesn't happen or some other, the TA doesn't do something else, then what we're looking at is another $4 million deficit based on the first 6 weeks projection. So that would be the 4.5 that we already don't have to give back, but we don't get, but we still have to pay for, and now another $4 million ostensibly, or hopefully some portion less, based on what we're doing, and also that TEA will come through. But we need to be cognizant of that.
Yes, we do need to be cognizant of that, but keep in mind that a portion of that 4.5 that you're referencing is the hold harmless that SR2 is going to make up. So it's not going to have that impact on our local funds.
That was the first 4.2, but I'm talking about this back on that other slide with the enrollment and the ADA numbers. There's another $4 million between what we'd projected and what is now being
correct. And so, again, that's something I wanted to point out with transparency and looking at our ADA every 6 weeks. I eagerly pulled that number this morning to see how significant of a change it was, and it has increased from that 7,000 to 72. So we hope with the initiatives that we're doing in the district that we see that ADA to continue to increase.
Certainly, but it also, I think we have so many challenges that we need to address, and that we're trying to solve all of it, right? And that money is not going to go that far in trying to solve all of the challenges that we are currently, all of us here, trying to overcome. So that's sobering. I think that is my question or comment in terms of that. I don't know if Dr. Salmi, other comments, questions?
I have one more question. You just brought up the estimated ADA. So you're telling us what it was in the first 6 weeks, and then you said we've already increased the number of the attendance number. So when this projected revenue is actually calculated, is it calculated over the course of the whole school year? What's the time period?
Correct. So when you look at projected ADA in that April column, that is a projected ADA number, right? So it does factor in an entire school year, if you will. Okay. So the column on the right, to kind of clear up any kind of misconception, if you will, is only the actual for the first 6 weeks ADA.
But it will require a reconciliation that like the same sort of settle-up process that we're still going under from last year. We'll have to go through next summer, this time next year for this year, and this is the trend at the moment.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, so we were projecting approximately 8.8% absenteeism, and now
in April of 21, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
So my question, and I've got more questions about the reporting, but I will save those for later. But my one question is if you all could find a way, starting next month, to report out to us on what this, like how this is trending on a month-to-month basis. I think that would be helpful for us to see, and specifically the impact it's having to the general fund, because we've made some big commitments with the general fund monies. And I know we got a great auditor's report tonight, but they also, they were saying 2 to 6 months is standard practice, and we're, after our expenditures, we are looking around 3, but then if we lose some of this, that will have an effect on the general fund also. So if we can be as, and I know that there was a report that was sent to the board and included in the board book that sort of put all of the general fund information together in a snapshot. I found that really helpful, and I would appreciate seeing that on a monthly basis. It doesn't necessarily need to be presented, but at least included in the board book. And even if it could be somehow incorporated into the regular reports that we're getting on a monthly and quarterly basis, so that we can be tracking that as we are making decisions.
Yes, ma'am.
We can put that in our board report that Mr. Hernandez works, like we can start listing that.
I think that would be really helpful to see all those things together. Because, I think it's been discussed before, but we're talking about different pools of money, right? But they're all going to the same boat. So thinking of them holistically is helpful. Trustee Hernandez, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, President Halsey. As I start my line of questions for my colleagues' benefit and the benefit of staff, I'm going to reference page 103 of our board book. So on page 103, it gives us the original budget allotment, including original revenue projections. Based on this information, our current expected expenditures for 2021, 2022 remain $85,422,243. Is that correct?
I don't have the board book in front of me, so let me check.
Hundred and three is Lamar.
Never mind. It says 100 on here, but it's not page 100. Yeah.
It's page 70, it's June of 2021.
June of 2020.
78.
Sorry, I don't know.
That's my fault. Just so we're clear on this, that the next few pages of the board budgets, that's something that I pulled together looking back over the last 6 months of the board books, because I wanted to sort of compare how the budget had changed. So that's my semi-professional presentation, so I should be held responsible for that, not staff, in terms of the pagination, et cetera. I just wanted to have it in one place.
Then include my very long preamble to my question. What is the current projected budget for this?
I'm sorry.
Total expenditures.
The projected budget?
Total expenditures.
Three, but,
What is our total budget for this year?
yeah, June 2021.
Go ahead.
So right now, our revised budget, our revenue is still set at 81,980,182, and then our expenses are at the 92,689,644, which minus all of our budget amendments that you guys have approved so far. This also includes the $7 million right now. But we're down to, I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on. 28, Mike, is that 28? 29 million.
Okay.
At this point. And that is with the fund balance of the previous audit fund balance. This is not updated yet. So our fund balance now is at 48. So actually, we're going to be about 38 is our fund balance now.
Okay, I guess my question is, with all the documentation we have in front of us, do we have a budget forecast that reflects an ADA of 7,000 to where revenue has decreased from 81 million to 77
No,
million?
that's prior year. What you saw with that 7,000 number is for revenue projection working forward into the 22-23 school year.
Okay. 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 So
That's not
on
how
the
it's
slide,
recorded. It says 2021, 2022.
22.
Sorry,
If you go back 2 slides or 1 slide.
right, so,
So 21, 22.
but working in 21, 22, projecting forward.
But they would still take that money, I mean, we would still be where we are now, where we have to be reconciling this year against next year, and with the loss of funds that would have come out of the general fund.
Correct.
Right. So that would just show up on next year's, but it would be actually, but I mean, we're still losing.
Correct.
We would still be losing the money. Does that,
Right.
Okay.
do you follow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I need a button.
Do you have more questions? Okay. All right, so, I mean, I think in terms of goals and goal setting, that seems like a whole separate workshop, unless people are prepared tonight to speak on what, I mean, my objective tonight was to sort of have an understanding of where we've been, where we're at now, sort of starting to think about the process for setting up next year, starting after the new year. Unless other people have, Trustee Hanson,
Yeah,
questions?
I'd like to have a schedule of when we're going to have these workshops, and I would like them to be separate from board meeting, because it just drags it on too
Yes.
long.
So,
Specific date? Any specific days?
days of the week, preference.
Mondays?
Well, I will talk to, I know that we're, heading into the holidays, and we do want to start the budgeting process as early as possible this year, because we want to make sure that we are all managing all of these many different complexities. But I will talk to President Cantu about maybe setting up a budget workshop for right after the new year, where we could start with the projecting out and goal setting for that period, and then sort of set the timeline up for the spring, if that makes sense to everybody. I don't want to set a date tonight without her present, but
Yeah, and I think perhaps if we broke it up into smaller sessions, it might be more effective.
yeah.
So I would prefer more effective, smaller sessions with fixed close times, like 2-hour max, so that we were all a little more able to participate instead of just waiting to get out.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and I think that now we have a sense of where we're at. Yes, Ms. Villalpando?
Yes, I think we have a Monday in between agenda prep and the actual board meeting. Is that agreeable with everybody? Or if you want to do the 4th Monday of the month? I don't know. Whatever.
In January. I think January gets a little crazy because of holidays, but we can ask to
Yeah.
figure out which one.
My preference is Mondays because of work. That
Okay.
makes it easier for me.
We'll see if we can figure out which Monday we don't already have an agenda prep or a school board meeting on in January, and try to schedule a 2-hour budget workshop for that evening, where we can talk about the process for the spring budget process, for figuring out the spring projections, set our goals, and what that timeline will look like, and get an update on where we're at with this budget process, which seems like, hey, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that, we will move into the consent agenda items. And I know there are consent agenda items, but, and we will take them all at once, but prior to having a motion, I'm going to ask Dr. Cardona to explain B, C, and D, because I think that we need a little more context for those items.
Sure thing. Actually, I'll let the experts present on items. So item B, I'll just talk real quickly, is consider approval of contract between Gramercy's Specialty Clinic, PLLC, Contractor, and San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District, and authorize the superintendent. And that is, April.
So regarding the Gramercy contract, April Chapman and I can speak to that. It's something we're budgeting in with ESSER 3. It's you want to speak a little bit about the service? It's an additional support service for students to seek counseling in terms of in response to COVID and the trauma that our students have faced.
Item C is consider approval of contract between Star Autism Support and San Marcos CISD. And Ms. Frank, I believe, is here to answer any questions on actually item C and actually item D, consider approval of contract between Trinity Educational Services and San Marcos CISD.
Do you have any specific questions, or? The Star Autism Grant is not new. It's something that we've had in last year. So it is a grant that provides training materials and support. We have them come out and consult with our ACL teachers to provide that in the ACL classrooms.
And the Trinity Educational Services?
The Trinity Educational Services, we are currently contracting with them to provide evaluation support. We have numerous evaluations right now for special education services, and so we are contracting out for speech evaluations and eligibility for special education evaluations for FIEs.
Any questions?
No, but I appreciate the clarification.
Trustee Hansen?
I was just ready to
Please,
move.
okay.
I move that we approve the consent agenda items as listed.
Second.
Second from Trustee Arredondo. All in favor, please.
President Halsey.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Halsey. My only request moving forward with the Gramercy Specialty Clinic PLLC contract is if the board can be provided at whatever staff's interval is deemed most appropriate, but I would be interested in seeing the usage of students, how many of our students, where those students are enrolled, essentially who's using the service and where and how frequently. So thank you.
And actually, I have a question. Will that be provided on our campuses, or is that an off-campus? It will be clinical services on our campuses. Great. Trustee
I'd
Selmy?
appreciate that as well. It was a good point. And I'd also like to know the numbers of the T-chat that we're already providing. I've never seen the numbers on that sort of usage of that program as well. So if we could get both of those numbers on some sort of a regular interval, I would appreciate it.
I think an update to the board after the first semester on sort of SEL programming, because I know it's being integrated throughout the district and classrooms and campuses, including those services, would be helpful. All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Anybody opposed? 7-0. Trustee Arredondo.
Yes, Ms. Halsey, seeing as how our police chief has joined us this evening, I am going to request that we move up the consideration and approval of the amended School Resource Officer Program interlocal agreement between the San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District and City of San Marcos.
I think that's just fine. Dr. Cardona, please proceed.
Chief, if you want to come up here to the podium. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you. So just to give a little context, the City Council had some amendments that we sent to y'all, 4 specific ones. There are Chief and myself, City Manager Bert Lumbreras, and some of our executive cabinet, Mr. Wozniak. We met with last week to discuss some of these, and there are a couple, and I'll let Chief explain, that we feel might be problematic from a legal standpoint if, there's a situation, Chief can correct me if I'm wrong. If there's a situation involving something that the police have to be involved in quickly that necessitates administration not being involved. I mean, I could use a specific example, maybe something inappropriate with a minor of some kind that the police are already investigating. There would be potential for problems for always having 2 people in the room. Does that make sense? I'll let Chief.
Well, good late evening. My name is Stan Standards. I serve as the police chief here in San Marcos. I'm also a resident of San Marcos, and for most of you, I am new. I'm here with my wife, Beth. Tomorrow marks our 1-year anniversary serving the citizens of San Marcos. So we started November 16th. I'm retired from the Abilene Police Department, did 26 years there. My wife served as the police and city chaplain there before we relocated to San Marcos. and we're very pleased to be here. So school resource officers are not new to me. We employed 8 school resource officers in the school in Abilene ISD. And tonight, what's before you is an interlocal agreement for our citizens. That's a memorandum of understanding where we execute a written agreement between us and the San Marcos City Council. You previously voted by unanimous vote, 7-0, to approve the interlocal agreement as it was stipulated. However, the City Council provided written amendments for your consideration. I believe that night there were as many as 11 introduced amendments. I believe that you have the only ones that passed by a vote of 4-3. So I'm going to specifically reference, for the benefit of everybody in the room, on page 1, under goals and objectives. It was important to 4 of the 7 council members that we educate our students on how to file grievances against police officers. That was approved. To be candid, I can live with that. If a citizen, yes, ma'am?
Trustee Hansen.
How would that happen?
So if a citizen approached the school resource officer and said, hey, I have concerns about your conduct, what could I do with that? Then I told the council I would absolutely expect the officer to take that moment
Okay, I didn't know
to educate
it
them.
had to be educating all the students in the campus.
No.
And I was wondering how that would, okay, I see.
Right.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have a question, Chief. Thank you so much for being here to help us work through this. I appreciate it. And welcome to San Marcos.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you here. So just for my own edification on this, would the grievance process in this case then go through our district grievance process, or does it go to you? How does that work?
So the interlocal agreement stipulates that the regulation, so to speak, of the school resource officers falls within the wheelhouse of the police chief. It's actually stipulated by law. So we are a civil service agency, which means we are governed by the Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 143. And Chapter 143 specifies that I, as the department head, can basically complain and then be the final arbiter of discipline. Nobody else outside of that. So in the case of fire services, it'd be Chief Les Stevens. So all such complaints would ultimately come back to us. We have a classification system. We classify the complaint as a Class 1 or a Class 2, and then it would be investigated and ultimately mitigated.
Okay.
I'm going to draw your attention to...
Sorry, are you, sorry, I've got one more question on that point if you're done.
Yeah,
So you
go
said that you would be fine with keeping that in?
I am, yes,
That-
ma'am. I would
okay.
expect the officers to take the time to explain to the students.
And would it be also amenable to you, because I think we've had this conversation on our board about making sure that our constituents know how to file grievances within our district, right? That's a really important outlet for our students and our parents to be able to fix a situation that is problematic for them, right? For us also. And so we put that procedure available to people on our website. Could we also include just a line or two with a link that would say, if, for information on filing a grievance with this school resource officer, please follow blah, blah, blah?
Yes, with one request.
Yes.
Madam President, would you please consider to file a commendation or complaint?
Sure.
We typically get focused on just the complaint process, but
Absolutely. I appreciate that suggestion. I think it's great, and I would ask then that
He's writing notes right now.
because that seems to me like that would help to satisfy that request also.
yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Draw your attention to Section 5.0. For the people who don't have copies, I'm going to reference what's called duty of school resource officers. It's specifically for the School Board of Trustees. I'm on page 4, and I'm going to look at 5.4. Here is what your superintendent was referencing earlier. The council approved by a vote of 4-3 that they added a sentence that says, any such counseling will be conducted with a minimum of 2 people present in addition to the recipient of the counseling. So let me back up for just a second. The sentence before that says, To counsel public school students in special situations, such as students suspected of engaging in criminal misconduct, when the officer deems it necessary or it is requested by the principal or the principal's designee or the SMCISD superintendent or the superintendent's designee. I explained to council that I can't agree to this because there's a provision of this that's not lawful. To counsel public schools in special situations such as students suspected of engaging in criminal misconduct. Please know that the records associated with juvenile offenders, and juveniles are defined in law as age of 10 up to 16, those are protected by statute, specifically Family Code 58.008B. So I could not allow a third party in the room when the school resource officer is counseling a student specifically about a criminal justice matter. So what I would ask you all to consider is you can redact, first of all, you can vote as is. My recommendation would be you need to redact such as students suspected of engaging in criminal misconduct. Because we're perfectly fine. If we're counseling the students outside of a law enforcement issue, I think they should have a witness. I'm okay with that. But if it's a law enforcement issue where we're working on probable cause, reasonable detention, or we may even be taking the person into custody, by law, I cannot allow that third party present, and I do not have enough resources to call in another cop off the street to provide that witness. So I would ask for your consideration on 5.4. Do you have any questions before I move on?
That sounds reasonable.
Okay. 5.5, to answer questions that students may have about Texas criminal or juvenile laws. That's existing language, but they added, as well as how to report crimes and violations of their rights. I can live with that. It's congruent with the very first suggestion. And then this is the last one. I'm going to draw your attention to page 7 under 12.0 evaluation. Now this obligates you all, so you get to ultimately decide what the school board of trustees will be obligated to, but the council is asking you to consider the SMCISD shall create a mechanism by which to collect feedback from caregivers regarding the SRO program. Do you have any questions on that one?
Ms. Halsey.
Yeah, please, Mr. Redondo.
Thank you, President Halsey. Chief Standridge, it's my understanding that through the SRO's program with the School Safety Center, there's already a mechanism in place that provides some type of opportunity for not only feedback from caregivers and students, but the teachers themselves. Is that, to your recollection, true? Is this already happening somewhere and it's not the ISD's responsibility to do it yet?
It is true that your ISD and your police department are in a grant-driven research project, and it's a couple of years in duration. It's funded actually by the National Institute of Justice through the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And what they are trying to assess is the efficacy of school resource officer programs that have specific goals and metrics for determining success. It's my understanding that you have 2 campuses that are participating in this ongoing research. Beyond that, I would defer to your superintendent, but I think that's what you're referencing.
Okay, thank you. That was adequate information. And answered my question.
So, Dr. Cardona, can you speak to that? Because in my mind, in my sort of thinking about this, I really approached our SRO program as it's a part and partnership of our district administration. That's why I was sort of asking, like, I'm surprised actually that we don't have a grievance process internally for it, right? Because I really see it as a team, and that I understand that the ultimate responsibility for your officers lies with you, but I really see them working, cooperatively with our staff and with our administration. And so I think if we were going to undertake the efforts of doing such a feedback program, I would not like it to be separated out. I would want it to be in concert and in correlation with other things that we do throughout the district around safety and responsibility for safety and student counseling, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe Mr. Wozniak can help me out here.
Good evening. So there's a misperception surrounding this grant. There will be no specific feedback for our SRO program in any kind of evaluation type of piece of it. So we started with the high school and Goodnight, and we're now with Miller doing this grant. For instance, the high school had a goal to educate the students and the staff to better understand what an SRO's role is. So they took a pretest, right? They gathered some data, and then they did a little bit of education, took some online things, and then they had a post survey that showed whether they met that goal or not. So it has absolutely nothing to do with any kind of feedback in that sense. And then Goodnight did something similar with relationships, and now Miller's in the process of doing that. So I've heard that mentioned a couple of times with, let's wait to see what this research shows, and it's not like that at all. It's more for our own benefit, and then they will take some of that data that they've gathered from multiple districts that they've worked with to try to improve the SRO program as a whole. But there will be no feedback as far as, well, this is what San Marcos needs to do better, this is what they're doing well, this is how they need to grow. So does that kind of answer? It's about the grant. So really it's totally separate than what we're talking about, which Chief mentioned. We believe what the city council is wanting is more of a survey put out to families that we would create, or if Texas School Safety Center has something that we could use or help us create, that'd be even better. And then we'd get some input from them on how we think the SRO program is doing from a stakeholder standpoint.
Dr. Salmi?
Yeah, I think input from our community about the SROs is an extremely valuable thing. My question is around how that input would be used and who would have access to it, right? So if we're required to conduct this survey and collect these data, are we then required to share them with the police department? Are we then, so what would you see, Chief, what would you see as the benefits or drawbacks of this sort of thing, and do you have any opinion about it?
I think as soon as your superintendent shared it, unless somehow you had confidentiality afforded in executive session, it becomes a public record as soon as it's shared with the school board of trustees.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, everybody would have access to it. You would expect that I would be very interested in the data, and you can bet my city council would be very interested in the data.
Mm-hmm.
So what would ultimately be done with it, I would suspect it would probably frame future conversations about this very agreement.
Okay.
Trustee Hansen?
Do we, this is for Dr. Cardona, do we already have some survey that we could attach this to rather than doing another separate survey, and then be able to piece out this information, or
We do have survey, when we talk, we do have the mechanism to do kind of a holistic approach with this as part of a holistic, like end of year, looking at different programs. We work with Qualtrics, so the name Qualtrics you heard in the equity audit. So we could develop, we would have access to, man, do I sound as bad as I sound? We do have access to what other districts are doing around the country, like thousands of other districts are doing in terms of surveying. And I will say that we would not send a survey out about the SROs without it going through the chief and the city legal department first.
Right.
So that, we're sending something out. I did tell him that I don't have a problem doing some type of program evaluation, because I'm fairly confident the majority of parents would really support the program as it is. But it would be a conversation between us. We would bring that to the board, obviously, because you have to approve the interlocal agreement. So I would imagine that you would see that survey before it goes out also to weigh in on it.
Okay, so wouldn't be.
We might be missing something.
Wouldn't be more extra work for the district.
No, we're starting to put in program evaluations for a lot of our things that coming out of COVID that we
Okay.
want to see if what we're doing is
I just
right
didn't
for our
wanna-
communities and kids.
Cause more work.
No.
So if we accepted this, I'm sorry, the language that you have there in front of you, if we accepted that point number 4, does it give us the leeway to spend a year or so figuring out what that survey and research mechanism looks like? Because I don't want to commit to something that then we have to suddenly produce quickly, because I think this is not the sort of thing that should be produced in haste. Like, there's plenty of research and data, and we need to be thoughtful and comprehensive, and so how it's integrated into our other efforts, so that because just the standalone thing strikes me as strange. So
Right.
Their suggested language does not have an implementation timeframe, and if I could also piggyback on your thought, it says specifically by which to collect feedback from caregivers regarding the SRO program. I can tell you for purely selfish reasons, I'd be very curious about your staff and everybody on all campuses
Sure.
and their perceptions of school resource officers. And I welcome all feedback, good and bad.
okay, great. Thank you so much. Any other questions, Trustee Arredondo?
There's one more that you have to go over, right, Chief?
If I missed it, tell me which page you're looking at. I may have
No,
missed it.
I didn't know if he had gone through all 4 yet. You did?
Okay.
That was the 4th.
Then this is just for conversation, then I don't have a question.
I think I did go through 4.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. I don't see, I think that's all of them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So shall we go ahead and take action on this while we're here? Trustee Arredondo?
Thank you, President Halsey. I guess individually, this process has been incredibly bizarre for me, watching it unfold, if I can be brutally honest with the 6 of y'all. This came to us, and we approved it unanimously several months ago, and something somewhere has happened in which now we've been given directive to do additional things that I think just are outside of the purview of the ISD or what we can do effectively. I mean, even the results of the survey have to go back to the city and to the police chief himself to where they would, I guess, possibly implement those amended changes. And so I don't know how to put into words where I'm going with this, except that I'm in favor of the contract that we approved several months ago and that we voted on unanimously. And so that's kind of where I am right now. And so I just kind of wanted to throw that out, those initial feelings and that perspective as we have this conversation.
Trustee Hansen?
I agree to a point. I don't understand why the city sent us a contract and the city council came back and amended their own contract that they sent to us. It's a little confusing. To me, if this was really important, they would have put it in at the beginning or wait till next year's contract. I don't have a problem approving it except for redacting that part on 5.4. But that, you know, that's my only thing, is I want that redacted because I don't want us to get into legal trouble. But it's frustrating to keep reviewing and reviewing and reviewing this same thing.
Right. Trustee Villalpando, did you have a comment? Did you have a comment?
I just wanted to point out that on 5.4, that we needed to get that done, but I don't see any problem with the additions, really.
As long as this is it.
Dr. Salmi?
This came to us from the city council.
Yeah, so we approved the,
Yeah, I remember the original approval, so this came back to us from the city council, just.
Right, when they went to approve it, they made these
They
changes.
didn't like our decision, okay. Then I would like to move that we make 2 changes to what they sent us. The first being in 5.4, removing such as students suspected of engaging in criminal misconduct, and in 12.1, adding collecting feedback from caregivers, staff, and students, and then move that we approve this interlocal agreement.
I just have one follow-up.
Trustee Arredondo?
Trustee Salmi. Thank you, President Halsey. So I guess, and again, this leads to part of my confusion. The city council voted, it sounds 4-3, to send us this contract. approved by that 4-3, or however that vote went down, for it being as written. But tonight, we are potentially making two changes that I theoretically support. So does that mean it goes back to council for them to approve the two changes? Is that what, okay,
gosh.
just making sure that this thing is still not fully baked after tonight if we do this, right? And I guess that's kind of where I am is, as of right now, I don't know how our SRO program is like operating without a contract. And so I just wanted to reference that, again, we voted on this thing a couple months ago. So if we vote with the proposed changes, then it would then go back to city council for possible approval, correct?
I don't know how their vote went. Yes, okay. It's not, they didn't approve it with those changes, and as long as we sign it, then we're good?
And as long as they sign it.
Right.
If they want to bring it back again, tell them no.
So they'll have to approve it again.
And until then, is our SRO program operational? That doesn't change
As
anything?
is,
or
yes.
Thank you.
They're operating under the previous contract?
Yes.
Okay.
I second Ms.
Second
Conley's.
from
Yeah.
trustee Hanson. And yeah, we'll vote in just a second. I wanted, anybody else have comment? So I agree this process is a little bit backwards, but I know prior to the pandemic, we were having regular, at some interval, meetings with our board or members of the board and the superintendent and the cabinet, with members of the city council and the city council cabinet and the county. I can't remember what we were calling those meetings because now I have pandemic brain. It was sort of the core four, but there were the core four regular meetings, and I think those have sort of fallen off.
Correct.
Given all the emergencies that we've all been dealing with. But hopefully in the spring, we might be able to bring back one of those meetings, if not two of those meetings. And I think an appropriate topic for consideration at that meeting would be looking at this and how do we review this thoughtfully and comprehensively, but also in the context of our ongoing comprehensive equity audit. Because I think that's a large conversation with many people involved, but it's an important one. And I know I'm going to be looking in December, if not, or December or January, for the next report from the equity audit and sort of what measures we are implementing based on those recommendations and where we see our path forward and how that's all working. Because I think this obviously has so many pieces that go together and talk about attendance, right? And everything that we've been talking about tonight. So, all right, without further ado, all in favor of the motion at hand, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, and all opposed? 2. So we will approve those changes with the detail in the motion 4-2. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Kathy. All right. What time are we at here, guys? Okay, we're 8:38. Let's go back to items for action and consider approval of the 2021 Comprehensive Financial Report
I
that
move
we
that we
received
approve.
earlier this evening, correct? Do we have more information? Any questions, trustee?
I move
Hanson?
that we approve.
Second from trustee Biapondo. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed?
I
That's
just
6-0.
wanna-
I said 7 before, sorry, we're missing 6.
I just want to commend our people who handle our finances for such a wonderful audit. Y'all did a great job, and I appreciate all the hard work of everybody.
I agree. I know we put y'all through your paces and we, ask a lot and demand a lot, but you really are terrific and we appreciate it. Okay, consider approval of district and campus improvement plans. Dr. Cardona, trustee Arredondo.
President Halsey, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the district and campus improvement plans as presented.
Second from trustee Viapondo. Any questions? Any comments? Oh, without that, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving the plans as presented, raise your hand. That will be 6-0, please. Thank you. And consider approval of the board policy update number 118, all 900 and some pages of it. Thank you, Dr. Bias. Yes, trustee Arredondo.
Thank you, President Halsey. I'll make a motion that we approve Board Policy Update 118.
I second.
A second from Trustee Mejia. Any questions?
Here we all read all night.
I have a
Trustee Hansen has a question?
I have a question on page 105 of our board book. A board's designee cannot further delegate the authority to receive these resignations to another individual. That means all resignations have to come to Dr. Cardona, is that correct?
There were some exceptions, because that was included in the recording that I listened to multiple times. Right. So he could ask us to say that Dr. Baez can also accept resignations.
So we would approve somebody at the beginning besides it could be Dr. Cardona and somebody else, or just somebody else?
Superintendent or
Okay.
designee.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Other questions? All right, all in favor of,
I am confused.
yes, please.
We have two options here. What exactly are we approving on update 118?
That's Board Policy.
Not the board policy, the human resources update from the
Thank you.
biennium. Yep.
Thank you.
Got
confused.
No worries. All right, so all in favor of accepting the 900 and odd page board policy update, please raise your hand. All opposed? 6-0. Now we are at the consideration of an approval of board operating procedures, and I would like to pull this from tonight's agenda and have a conversation at our next agenda prep, because these are really the rules that govern. Did I skip something?
You're on D, I believe, Madam President. The BED local policy.
Oh, I thought that was contained in the other one, sorry. Discussion and possible action to modify board policy, BED local. Dr. Baez.
So this one actually is similar. Okay, so usually the board president can, if you have 30 speakers and you have 30 minutes and they say all 30 are going to have 1 minute, now the board has to authorize the board president to do that. So this change in policy is y'all saying the board president can say what they were saying before. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So when will we do that?
When do we do that?
And there were two options, weren't there?
Yes. It was,
Do we do that at each meeting, or can we do it
No, this is just the one.
when the officers are elected? I mean, I don't know when we're supposed to do that.
So, President Halsey?
Yes, Trustee Arredondo, go ahead.
Yes, I am gonna request that this item be postponed as well. Mainly because I think there's some clarifying issues that we're running into based on the comments of some of my colleagues.
Right.
However, also because, I don't know, like, when people come to speak to this board, there's a set standard or a set expectation. I'm going to speak, I'm going to have 3 minutes to speak on whatever issue, good, bad, indifferent, congratulatory or not. And so I really want to have that conversation with my colleagues that I think, regardless of circumstance, instance, or frequency of speaker, I think every citizen who shows up should be entitled to their 3 minutes in front of us. So anyway, with all that being said, if we can table this item or pull it from tonight's agenda as well, that's what I'm advocating for.
Yeah, I hadn't recognized that conflict until now. Thank you all for bringing that up. I think that there is a conflict here between the approval of this local policy and the discussion and changes that we are looking to make to our board operating procedures. So I think we should take that as one conversation. And as I was going to say, I would like to hold off on the board operating procedures from tonight, because in part, they really are the guidelines that dictate our operations and behaviors and procedures, and we don't have one of our members here, and I think it's important to have that conversation among all of us. And plus, we just got a new revision from Mr. Cruz today, and there's some other changes that I wanted to talk about, so I think we should move that to December. Trustee Hansen?
Also, I thought we were going to try out some of these before we actually adopt them, such as having the board books ready the Monday before the meeting, to see how that impacts the staff. That was my understanding. If I'm wrong, then I think we should try out at least that one, if not some of the others, to see how's that going to mainly impact Ms. Logue, but also all the people that have to prepare items, especially when sometimes we have agenda prep, it's not very often, and the next Monday we have our board meeting. So.
Which will probably be the case in December because the holidays.
December and I think
throw the
January.
Scheduling off.
I think it's the following Tuesday, so.
Right.
We're gonna make exceptions on those, or, exactly what, but I'd like to try it out, like, say, for December, to see if that's, how many extra man-hours and how many extra supplements we get at the board meeting, which I don't really like getting those because I don't have time to read them ahead of time.
I'm all in favor of trying it out if it means we get the board book more than 3 days ahead of the board meeting. So if we could have that tryout period, I'd be all for that. And I'm perfectly happy with postponing the operating procedures. I would ask if it's possible for us to discuss and vote on it at our agenda prep meeting, or is that outside of our?
We've been trying not to take votes, but I think that we could certainly, if everybody would be prepared to have any comments, any questions, any suggestions that they wanted to make, ready to either to submit in writing for the agenda prep meeting if you're unable to attend, or to present at the agenda prep meeting so we can collate them all there and then get them together and distribute hopefully a week in advance of the board meeting in the board book. And then we could do hopefully what will be, because we will have already worked out those things, a quick approval in the meeting in December. If everybody is okay with that? Yep.
That's moving item D and E.
D and E, please.
And the
Yes.
BED local as well.
D and E, yep. All right, then we still good? Okay, we'll move to item F, consider a resolution to vote for candidates for the Board of Directors of the Caldwell Appraisal District. We will take F, G, and H all together. And do we need a presentation? Mr. Hernandez, welcome.
You learn something new every day. So today I learned a little bit about appraisals. So I first want to just thank Alicia Gunther. She's a godsend, and she helped me, she'll help us get through this process. So with Caldwell County, we're entitled to 187 votes out of 5,000, and we have 8 candidates to choose from, and we can delegate the votes however we like, to one person, equally to all 8. It's truly up to us. Yes, ma'am?
Trustee Barry-Pondo?
Did any one of them contact?
Yes.
Yes, we had one candidate reach out to us.
Ms.
And that was Ms.
Villalobos
Yes.
reached out to us and asked for the votes.
Who was that?
Ms. Sonia Villalobos?
That's in, for Caldwell.
This for Caldwell,
President
yes.
Halsey?
Trustee Arredondo?
Thank you.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we delegate our allotment of votes to Ms. Villalobos.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any questions, comments? And then let's take a vote on designating our 187 votes to Sonia Villalobos to represent us in the Board of Directors of the Caldwell County Appraisal District. All in favor? Opposed? 6-0 for Ms. Villalobos, please.
All right, next up is Guadalupe.
Thank you.
And we're entitled to 54 votes out of 5,000 for 5 directors. We have 5 nominees, and once again, we can delegate those votes to any 5 members or 1 member in particular.
Again, do we have anybody contact us?
Not at this.
We did not have, to my knowledge, anybody from Guadalupe County reach out to us.
Would
But
any-
they still have the previous superintendent as the superintendent of schools here, so, you know.
Then I
Would a
move-
trustee like to make a recommendation? Trustee Hansen?
I move that we just divide our votes between all of the people applying.
I'll second.
Questions, comments? Okay, well, let's take a vote on assigning our 54 votes between the 5 people, which will not be quite even.
That's not divisible by 5, I do know that one. So 54.
Is it 54?
The best you can.
54 divided by 5, right?
In order.
In order.
Okay,
In
there we go.
alphabetical order.
Don't give the odd numbers out there.
Oh, should we just do 50 of them?
Yeah, just do 10
If we can only do equal.
50 divided by 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's 10.
10 each to each
10
of the
each.
5.
Hard math.
I'm going to need y'all to go to,
All right, all in favor of dividing up 50 votes among the 5 people seeking this appointment on the Guadalupe Appraisal District, raise your hand. All opposed? That is 6-0. And
We have to have some fun, right?
I move on, I'm sorry, on the.
Yes, Hayes County.
Hayes County, that all of our votes go towards Joe Castillo. He served us
Second.
well all these years, and I think he'll continue to do so.
I just have a question. Is it 1,054 votes out of 5,000 still?
Out of 7,000.
7,000.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think,
No, you can give it to Margie, it's fine.
okay. Trustee or Trustee Villalpando with the second. Questions, comments? All in favor of designating our votes to Joe Castillo? And that is 6-0. Thank you, especially to Mr. Castillo, who isn't here, but for his faithful service on our behalf. Can we keep moving, or do we need a break? How's everybody else? Okay. All right, let's go to item I, discussion regarding dress code for teachers, staff, paraprofessionals. Dr. Cardona, could you please provide us an update and information on this?
so Human Resources will be sending out some updated information to our teachers and staff. There is a section that says no jeans in schools. And then on the next page, if you look down, there is principal discretion is given. So we're going to move that sentence of principal discretion and move it up to the section that I think is causing some confusion, to give our principals gratitude and leeway in working with their campus staff who are working hard this school year, so that we can take care of that. And then we will send that information out to them. They sign for their staff handbooks, so we want to create a process where they get that second update, the amended update, so that they know their principals. And we met with the principals last Thursday and explained the glitch and how they can take care of it. And we have some very innovative principals that know how to read really well and can use the system. So I'm sure they will take advantage of that.
Okay, so can I just make sure that I understand then that at the principal's discretion, staff will be able to wear jeans, appropriate jeans, and school T-shirts and school shirts that represent the ISD or their individual campus, and that will also include staff who might work at multiple campuses. So if they fall under a special department, that they will also be included, even if they report to a director or somebody who is not a principal.
Correct. Our big buckets, AVID, dual language programs, character education programs, SEL, all those things that the district holds dear, or CCMR, University Days, Purple Pride Days, all those fit under that.
Okay, that's great. And just my personal preference is that it not be held out as a carrot. I think our teachers are under such duress and working so hard, and sort of saying that as good reward you get to wear jeans, that doesn't bolster the sort of moral support that I feel like we really need to surmount for them. And just, so as we can treat them as much as like the professionals that they are, I would ask that kindly of y'all and appreciate that support for them. Because I know everybody is working so hard this year and think great things are happening, but it is hard. Okay, so I don't know that we actually need to take a vote on this item unless anybody has any further concerns or questions. We can move on. All right. We have already taken care of item J, so now we are at item K, discussion and possible action regarding the dissolution of the Central Office Subcommittee, and that was a request that I had made to the agenda. Trustee Hansen?
I discussed before our meeting, we feel like we're through. So
Okay.
if you want to formally dissolve it, fine, but we've done our work.
Thank you. Trustee Villalpando?
I think that it was automatic when we all voted to hire Santec. It's their chance to come back to the board and decide. I mean, you will all decide what they recommend, whatever. but we did our part, and I don't think we need a motion.
Okay, I'm fine with that also. I think I appreciate the work you all put in, and I know that it took a lot of time, and I think we have a good plan to move forward, and I am fine to move forward as long as we all understand that now, whatever transpires and how this project proceeds, that it will come to the full board for input and evaluation and discussion, and unless questions, comments. All right, we can move through that one. We might get out of here before 11, y'all. Let's, discussion, I've already missed the basketball scrimmage, but that's okay. Discussion and possible action regarding staffing at San Marcos High School.
President Halsey?
Yes, Trustee Arredondo.
Thank you so much, President Halsey. So this was, I apologize, an agenda item request that I made after agenda preparation, but within the window of putting it on tonight's agenda. I think we had a very beneficial discussion in executive session last month, and without speaking to what that discussion was, my expectation or my hope is that with this budget projection that sits in front of us, that we can all kind of sit with this information and reflect on potentially considering using ESSER funds to increase support at San Marcos High School. We've seen not only in the attendance presentation that there continue to be challenges that I think were just not forecasted or expected returning from virtual instruction while amidst a global pandemic and I think a public health crisis that both in regards to like mental health public crisis as well. So my expectation or my hope is not to vote on this tonight, one way or the other, but to have us have this information. I wanted to explain publicly why I requested this during the discussion portion of this item, but my hope or expectation is to have a more lengthy, robust conversation in December. So no need to vote, just kind of wanted to throw this out here. I think there's needs at San Marcos High School that are not being met, and so I wanted to see kind of what the breakdown was, is if we hired any of these positions to increase our support at the campus. It's not saying we would approve all of these at a cost of $342,000. It could be, you know, 1 or 2 hall monitors. It could be an extra core subject teacher, an administrator, counselor, whatever to the board's desire. But anyway. So.
Trustee Hansen?
I would like, whenever this is brought back again, to know, okay, how many APs do we currently have, how many counselors, and then the numbers that are for the need for extra teachers. I mean, I know we kind of talked about it, but I'd like something in writing. And I understand the need for hall monitors after our discussion.
Yeah, so I have heard from a number of teachers who are concerned and would like to have more support and feel like, you know, like I think we talked about in the ESSER conversation, that a lot of the ESSER funds went to really shore up things that we were already doing. I know that we have done some new things and we were adding some things, but I think that there is a sense among some of the faculty that they really need more help. And I think, you know, that in terms of monitoring, but also just, you know, some of the classroom sizes still continue to be really large. And I would like to see us try to figure that out before the second semester starts, so that y'all get the extra help that you need, so that the spring, you know, hopefully everybody gets vaccinated over the holidays and we come back in a really robust manner and we get our attendance up and all the things. But to make all those things happen again, right, we need hands, and I think we even heard earlier in the presentation about bilingual education and dual language that there's some short staffing there, right? There's so much to do. So I would be willing to entertain a motion to go ahead and approve this funding, and maybe then have administration come back to us with the administration at the high school and make a recommendation and say, okay, if we can have this much money, then this is what we would like to hire, and we could approve those hires or the positions in December, so we can get people in, because we're also facing a shortage. It's really hard to find people to teach, and also, I mean, jobs right now, it's hard to fill them. So I think the more time we can give you all to get this, the more likely we are to have people in our schools in January. And I would really like to see us bring hall monitors in right now. Additional hall monitors. I think, I've talked to some kids, and I think it's a very challenging year, and we need all hands on deck. So that's where I'm coming from.
I would prefer to have the request come from the administration rather than us telling them that this is what they should do. So I support the idea. I just would like to hear what they would want, rather than us telling them what they need. That's my only thing. I wouldn't want us to vote on something right now if it's not requested from the administration.
Dr. Cardona, do you want to give us your perspective, please?
Well, I think we're going to have a presentation by Mr. Mitchell in December, so I think it ties in. The high school, every campus has some vacancy issues and has some needs. So if we're going to discuss the use of ESSER funds, it might involve a bigger discussion around support for not just the high school, but for elementary and middle schools, because they're also struggling also. But yes, there most definitely is a need. The kids have been out for 20 months, so we can sit with the principals and have a discussion in between and then come back with something for y'all. I think that it would be an us conversation, I think.
Trustee Hernandez?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Halsey, Dr. Cardona, Dr. Salmi. If the conversation moves there, we obviously discussed it in executive session, so without violating that conversation for the purposes of this meeting, I would be comfortable hiring or making a motion to hire 2 hall monitors this evening to provide immediate relief and hopefully some support at the high school, if that was feasible, possible.
The other programs.
So just as we
do you want to make
have
that?
this conversation-
Do you want to make that an official motion?
I'll make a motion that we allocate funds to hire 2 additional hall monitors at San Marcos High School.
So I have a question
Tommy?
about the capacity at the high school. Is my recollection of the numbers we saw last meeting was that they have not been able to hire to the full staff at this point, right? That there are still open positions that have not been filled. So if that's the case, I'm not exactly understanding how us providing more funds to fill these positions would help fill these positions.
I think 7, Ms. Presley? No, Ms. Presley? Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, could you come up to the podium, please?
So can publicly record you.
And vacancies and what?
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that we're understanding. So,
It's a teacher vacancy that.
right,
that doesn't-
vacancies. Specifically, we're talking about hall monitors right now. So, how
I'm
many
actually
hall
talking about all the vacancies.
Do you have any hall monitor vacancies at the moment?
I don't currently have any hall monitor vacancies.
And do you feel like having more hall monitors soon would be beneficial to you?
I am, and not to be funny, I'm a high school principal, so anytime you say, do you need hall monitors, absolutely. I'd rather sit and talk with district administration and make sure that we are doing not only what's right by our campus, but also by the district, and look at our numbers and also our discipline referrals and some of those things, and then we can really pinpoint exactly what part of staffing we might need to move forward on the quickest.
Okay. Other questions?
So I have a motion, but I didn't hear a second. So if it dies on the vine, it dies, but.
I'll second.
Second, Trustee Mejia, thank you. Okay, so I from talking to kids and to teachers and to teachers at the high school and students at the high school, I just think it's such an incredibly stressful year and so difficult, and being able to shore that up and helping with the attendance, helping, I think hall monitors, in my understanding, have multiple functions. And so helping with lunchroom, with attendance, with tardy, with all of those things, I think at this point we need more. So I'm going to be in supportive of that. And then I would like to see the superintendent and the cabinet come back in December with a request for what you all need. Like, what can we do for you? How can we help? Who else can we help you with? And so that we can get through this together, right? So, Trustee Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Halsey. Just as a follow-up, and really, justification for this, we heard, and I'll say whatever, y'all can take me to court, that like one of our teachers was essentially laid out during a fracas because they decided to involve themselves in an altercation between students. And that, to me, like, I don't want our classroom teachers having to get overly involved in situations like that. And so for me, like, I can't in good conscience, with that information, move forward without providing additional support in that aspect. So that's why I'm voting in favor of this tonight.
Trustee Asami?
Can I get some clarification on what the motion is? Are we telling the district that they need to hire 2 new monitors, or are we allowing the district to hire 2 new monitors if that's what the administration sees fit?
I guess the intent of my motion is to allocate the funds for them to hire 2 additional hall monitors.
2 FTEs.
Well, no, because on the breakdown, it gives us what the cost of a hall monitor, $26,135 times 2. I don't even think that gets you to like a teacher. So it would just be the funds for the hall monitors.
Part of the 2/3 of the funds that are identified here for the homeowners. And I will say that, I think kids are just having such a hard time, right? It's just been like tumultuous, and trying to get kids back into any sense of a normal routine and what they need to do and how that works and what it looks like. I find myself as a parent reparenting things that I thought that we had parented and solved with my kids 5 years ago, right? It's a hard job right now with kids because things have just been so topsy-turvy. And so having more support, more adults who are able to get them where they need to go and doing what they need to be doing and realizing why this is to their benefit, right? Like why we are asking them to do these very difficult things is what I am interested in seeing us try to solve this in this allocation. Not solve, but improve. I just think it's hard to be a kid right now, and more responsible adults in their lives that have more time to be able to dedicate to them and work with them, the better. Trustee Hansen, or Trustee Valley-Pondo, sorry. Please go ahead.
Go ahead, you were first.
Oh, okay. I just want to clarify something to see how the vote's gonna go, but, or my vote's gonna go. Didn't we just hear, Principal Presley say that they would look into this and hire staff? I mean, she's here, she knows what's going on. I understand the concern about the students that are having problems and acting out, their frustrations. Yes, I understand that. But they're here on a daily basis. The staff is here. I think that we need to listen to what the staff has to say and then go ahead with your motion if you want it to be hire 2 people. But how we just say hire somebody to come and take that's not gonna solve anything, I think, except put more people on staff.
But I didn't hear Ms. Presley say no, she didn't want additional support, and that didn't.
Well, but wouldn't the recommendation come from her, what needs to be done? We are constantly just doing this kind of thing, adding more staff, and personally, I want to hear from the people that are in the school to tell us, and of course our superintendent. So, I don't know, that's just the way I feel.
Thank you. Trustee Hansen?
I will be voting against this because I want to hear from the staff and the superintendent as to what they need before we say, here's the money to hire what we think you need, instead of she may want it all to go towards another teacher or something like that. I would like to hear that information. And we have an early December board meeting, so I think that would give enough time to get the information out.
Thank you.
President
I'd like to-
Halsey, I'm going to call the
just a second.
question. 'cause
I just
think
wanna
it's
let-
evident
let's let
it's
Dr.
gonna
Salmi talk.
fail, So this
Can we just please let,
conversation is-
I understand, we'll take the vote just immediately, but I'd like to let Dr. Salmi make her comment.
Thank you. I'd be willing to support it if we included the item that it was at the discretion, we were allocating the funds at the discretion of the administration. That's all I wanted to say. Make sure that that this is not forced upon them.
Trustee Arredondo, would you take that revision?
To amend the line item to reflect how much money, Dr. Salmi?
No, that you were allocating the funds at the discretion of.
For
the-
two
at
hall
the-
monitors at the discretion of the campus administrator?
High school, that you're trying to put them in.
I'm going to do the math to give you that number. So just 1 second.
No, I don't need them.
Well, because it's allocating the funds for whatever that was. to
Right. The language I want, the change I want is that the language read that the allocation be, that the hall monitors be hired at the discretion, that those funds only be used if that's the request of the administration.
Oh, well, I apologize for the confusion, because I always thought that was the expectation. Like, we give them the funds for the hall monitors. If they use it, they do.
Yeah, that
If they
didn't.
don't, they
okay.
don't.
Yeah,
Let's
that was
just be
the whole-
specific. It's okay.
Yeah,
Do you want to,
and
so,
that
Okay.
seemed to be the
Okay, well, then
part of
we-
the conversation.
So then, make a motion that we allocate $52,270 to San Marcos High School for additional staffing per administrative discretion.
Trustee Mejia, do you support the amended
I
motion?
second, yes.
Okay, second. All right, and then I think we will call the question, and without further, if we have the motion on the floor, all in favor, please raise your hand. And opposed? And that will carry 5-1. Which brings us to the consideration of the approval of the budget amendments. Can we get an explanation of the budget amendments, please?
I believe there's only one budget amendment, and that's to.
The one we
It's
just approved?
It's a big,
One, though.
it's a big budget amendment, but it's to move the money so that we can begin the process of actually building the central office.
I second.
Any questions? Trustee Arredondo?
It's not a question, it's just a statement. As we prepare to vote on the largest budget amendment in our school district's history, I just want to acknowledge that we're all jumping off this cliff together, I think, or most of us are, which is fine. I understand that the vote might go differently, but, yeah, here we go, so.
Any other questions, comments? All in favor of the budget amendment to fund the construction of the central office at $7,018,559 in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? That motion will carry 6-0.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second from Trustee Arredondo. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Happy Thanksgiving. Be safe and happy.
Everybody be safe.
9:15 was still pretty good.
Ms. Halsey.
It's 9:13.
Oh, boy, that's hard to pick. I'll take the.
Okay.